Hey, everybody. Welcome. We have got plenty to talk about tonight. Wow. All right, let's go. Let's roll.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just it's a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. And tonight we got a lot to talk about. We will be following our normal formula, except there is one twist. So the way we do it, opening remarks, followed by the roll call. Then I answer your super chat questions, the questions that you send in. The great new development is that now there is a new way to send your questions, right? Because many people were saying that, look, I'm not on Cash App. It's not in my country. I don't want to set up a Rumble Rant account. Well, now you can send a question via buymeacoffee.com. That's right. We've got a link, buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. You can go there, pick how much you want to send, and you can super chat me that way as well. And I will have my email open, so I will be notified as soon as you send in your question. And that is yet another way. There is now 3 ways that you can send your question. If you're on the Rumble, you can send a Rumble Rant. If you are wanting to use Cash App, you can Cash App me, Caleb Maupin 22, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin, and you can send your question that way. 3 ways to send your questions. Great news. Obviously, the big announcement is that we are looking at Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska. And I'm going to be talking about that. And we're going to be in the streets tomorrow. Center for Political Innovation is going to be in the streets around the country, in support of the peace talks. That's the big announcement tomorrow and Saturday. I'll be talking more about that. But yeah, we're going to follow our normal format. First, the opening remarks, then the roll call, then I answer your questions. And there are now 3 ways to send your questions. We have a new way via buymeacoffee.com. You can send your question that way. I'll get notified and I'll answer it in the second half of the show. 3 ways to send questions. YouTube has demonetized us, so you can't directly super chat me on YouTube, but you can buymeacoffee.com. You can Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App, or you can Rumble Rant. 3 ways to send your questions. So ask away, get me talking in the second half of our show. Okay. Friends, tomorrow is a very, very, very big day. And it's happening. And it's already started. A Russian plane, the first Russian plane, has already landed in Anchorage. And there are Russians already there. They have got, the airspace blocked off for when the Russian president's plane comes. This is big. This is the first Russian plane that just arrived. The first Russian plane arriving in Anchorage. The meeting is going to be at a military base. And this is all very, very exciting. Here we go. Anchorage Airport. A Russian government plane is touching down. Would you look at that? And they've got a special airspace block. Nothing can fly to make way for the Russian president's plane. It'll be at the Anchorage U.S. military base. The Russian president will be meeting with the president of the United States. And we heard from President Trump today from the Oval Office. He was speaking mainly about Social Security, but he did touch on the upcoming meeting, and he laid some information about what's going to happen tomorrow on us. Here's what he said.
Great. You know, I've solved 6 wars in the last 6 months, a little more than 6 months now, and I'm very proud of it. I thought the easiest one would be this one. It's actually the most difficult. We had one war raging, as you know, for 37 years. One in the Congo with Rwanda was raging for 31 years. We solved 6 of them, made peace, not just solved them, we made peace. If you look at Pakistan and India, that was, planes were being knocked out of the air. 6 or 7 planes came down. They were ready to go, maybe nuclear, we solved that. I thought this would be maybe an easier one. It never made sense, this war. It would have never happened when I was president. If I were president, this war would have never happened.
Yeah, that you heard it. He intends to solve it. He said it's hard. It's the hardest one to solve, but he intends to solve this war. And then he went on to spill the beans about some other details. This is what he went on to say later.
I have a meeting with President Putin tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. It's I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens. And I think President Putin will make peace. I think President Zelensky will make peace. We'll see if they can get along.
Yeah. So meeting number 2 that's going to have Zelensky there is already confirmed. Apparently they spoke to Zelensky earlier and it must have gone well, because now they're confirming that not only is meeting number 1 going to happen tomorrow in Anchorage, Alaska, but meeting number 2 with Zelensky is already scheduled. And they're hoping some European leaders will be there as well. But it's happening. It is happening. It is happening. Now, I see some folks saying it hasn't started on Rumble. That's weird because, yeah, we're streaming. That is very odd because, yeah, we have started. That is odd. Is that a technical problem or something? Yeah, you can't see me on the Rumble. That is pretty weird. That is pretty odd. Have we started? Yeah, no, we've started. We're on the Rumble. Yeah, you can see me. Don't fake me out like that. Don't fake me out like that. No, we've started. We've started. But yeah, we're on Rumble right now. We're on Facebook right now. And we're on YouTube right now. And yeah, I see and hear you on Rumble. Yeah, somebody needs to, figure out what they're doing. Hemp Car's watching, right? We're fine on the Rumble. We're fine on the Rumble. But this is big. This is big. A couple details. I mean, there's a couple little informational, pieces I can show you. This is, some details about Alaska. There's a little video Sputnik put together about Russia and Alaska and all of that.
Do you know, Russia is a stone's throw from America? Not many people know how close neighbors Russia and the United States actually are. Between Chukotka and Alaska in the Bering Strait is a border that runs through 2 tiny islands, Big Diomede, Russia, and Little Diomede, US, which are only 3.8 kilometers or about 2 miles apart. These islands, besides being in different countries, also live in different times. Big Diomede is called Tomorrow's Island, and Little Diomede is called Yesterday's Island, because they are separated by the International Date Line, creating a difference of almost 24 hours. When ice links the 2 islands, you can literally cross the boundary in time. If the sea is not shrouded in fog, the inhabitants of Little Diomede can not only see Russia, but also look into the future. Since 1989, the indigenous inhabitants of the island can visit each other without visas for up to 90 days, despite national borders.
Yeah, I didn't know that about the little islands that are in the Bering Strait. That's pretty neat. That's pretty cool. It's something I was not aware of. There's a lot of things happening. We had Trump saying that he wants to wrap up the war. And then we had the White House press secretary. This is what she said about those who are opposing this move, like John Bolton.
won't be so kind, and I'll just name some of those people, such as John Bolton, who I think has made a disgrace of himself on television and in the newspapers, claiming that he knows better than President Trump. No, he doesn't, and neither do any of these so-called foreign policy experts who have never solved a foreign policy conflict in their lives. Look at what this president has done in 6 months. He has stopped 7 global conflicts all around the world, using the leverage of the United States of America to negotiate these conflicts to an end. You had the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia at the White House last week, both of whom said this would not have been possible without the leadership of President Trump and his administration. So the American people trust this president. That's why they overwhelmingly reelected him. And I think it's pathetic, some of the chatter that we see from these so-called experts who have zero accomplishments on their own resumes to point to. President Trump knows what he's doing. He has great instincts. This is a highly complex and brutal war that, again, inherited by Joe Biden. Russia did not invade Ukraine under President Trump. They invaded under Joe Biden because of his incompetence and his weakness. And this president is trying to solve it and bring it to an end. And he deserves great credit for that.
Yeah. Wow. Calling out the warmongers. John Bolton, neoconservative, former Sovietologist trained in the 1980s, was one of the main people who pushed Donald Trump to do the bad things that he did in his first term, who left the Trump administration, turned against Trump, said that if Trump were to ever get reelected, that Trump would lead the USA out of NATO, which sounds great to me. She just calls out calls out John Bolton. Now, folks, none of what's happening now would be possible without Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is now declassifying all the information showing to what extent the government of the United States, the CIA, etc., lied about so-called Russiagate. That the intelligence agency said Russia was not interfering in the U.S. elections, and they basically cooked the books to make it say that they were. There's even emails now that have been revealed by Tulsi Gabbard in the last 24 hours that say that apparently they called framing Trump a team sport. They said it was a team sport. And you just look at these emails that Tulsi Gabbard is revealing about how the deep state that wants war went out of their way to set up Donald Trump in his first term so he couldn't get along better with Russia, and to psych up the American people, to hate Russia, to believe that Russia was interfering in the U.S. elections. And it's all coming out. And, Tulsi Gabbard actually won a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton claimed that she was an asset or an agent of Russia. She sued Hillary Clinton and won. Tulsi Gabbard is absolutely amazing. She's really, really great. And as you all know, we're going to be in the streets tomorrow supporting the peace deal in New York City and on Saturday and other parts of the country. We're going to have 9 different cities. We have made these special placards for the Center for Political Innovation that say, "Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi." Here, I'm going to look at that. "Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi, Center for Political Innovation." They're so big, I can't even get them into the shot. Look at that. Look at these beautiful, beautiful signs that we got designed, right? Very, very professional. And we will have these all across the country. "Thank you, Tulsi." In addition to that, we have other signs that we've made of Trump and Putin shaking hands saying we support peace talks. "Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi." Look at this beautiful design. I am feeling good about it. They've been delivered in different parts of the country already. Some of them are coming tomorrow. And it looks like nine different cities are going to have Center for Political Innovation rallies tomorrow to support the peace talks with Russia. 9 different cities. Can you believe it? So that's really great. We'll be in Chicago, we'll be in Minneapolis, we'll be in LA, and we'll be in Boston. And in a few other cities, we're going to have small gatherings where just 1 or 2 of our members are at, you should have heard from somebody. If you are the person I think you are, your email was forwarded to somebody. So, you should have heard from somebody. But But yeah, and we're doing it. We're having, little rallies in different parts of the country. And we are going to make clear on the streets of the country that there is support for the peace talks. It's very, very exciting. Very, very, very exciting. And I'm really glad that we're doing it. I'm really, really glad that we are doing it. What can I say? What can I say? It needs to happen. It urgently needs to happen. And we're going to be in the streets making it happen. And I've got a big day tomorrow. So I'm starting out tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. I will be on with Jamarl Thomas to talk about the talks and where we're at with that. Then later in the day, I'll be on Truth Wire with Craig Pasta Jardula. And then later in the day, I'll be in the streets of New York City. Location, obviously, will be a surprise. We don't want to get messed with. We don't want Ukrainians to harass us. So the location is not, is only for trusted allies. But we've got, it'll be small. And these aren't going to be huge gatherings. It's not going to be thousands of people. These are going to be people that are part of CPI, that are part of the CPI movement, that are trusted. And we're going to be out there and we're going to make a visible display of support for the peace talks. And it's very, very important that this happen. In other news, great article just went up on the CPI website. Great article about the Sydney Sweeney controversy. That will be up. Good stuff. What else? Other things are happening. I mean, things are happening all the time. Things are happening all the time, and we are getting stuff done. And you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going. Yeah, you just have to keep going. So, I don't quite know what to say at this point, and I don't want to ruin things, but I thought it might be a good night to just kind of put on some celebratory music. That might be a neat thing to do. I see that there's one Rumble rant that's already come in, so obviously I can answer that. But we'll put on some celebratory music and just kind of try to take the win. That's one thing we really need to work on. I will say, we as a movement, as a community, we really need to learn to take the win. If things are moving in a good direction, we should celebrate that. We shouldn't try to say, oh, it doesn't really count. Obviously, if we have concerns, and I have concerns, look, it ain't over till it's over. There's no guarantee that we're going to get the peace deal that urgently needs to happen. There's no guarantee of that. There is absolutely no guarantee. I cannot promise you we're going to get the peace deal that we all are hoping for. These things are not set in stone, obviously. But that said, it is our job to push for it. It is our job to boost good, not just complain about the bad. So it looks like we could move toward the exciting new developments that we have been advocating for so long coming into fruition and into reality. So I'm going to put on a song for now. I've got a couple other things to do, and I'll answer any questions people have. And, that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way we do things. So, yeah, I'm going to first put on, this is a song. This is an old labor song called The Commonwealth of Toil. The Commonwealth of Toil. That's what it's called. So I'm going to put that on for you all. We'll put on The Commonwealth of Toil, and we'll listen to that, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. Then from there, we'll do some other things, just like we always do. I might open the phones tonight. People might want to hop on. We'll see. I might open the phone lines, but we'll see about that. But yeah, this is an old wobbly song called The Commonwealth of Toil. And the Commonwealth of Toil, it's basically about, when the wealth producing people of the world take control, and we no longer have the parasites and financiers running things. The common people run things. So here we go.
In the gloom of mighty cities, midst the roar of whirling wheels, we are toiling on like chattel slaves of old. And our masters hope to keep us ever thus beneath their heels, and to coin our very lifeblood into gold. But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will be when we all can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is run by labor, there'll be joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. They would keep us cowed and beaten, cringing meekly at their feet. They would stand between each worker and his bread. Shall we yield our lives up to them for the bitter crust sweet? Shall we only hope for heaven when we're dead? No, we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will be when we all can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is run by labor, there'll be joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. They have laid our lives out for us to the utter end of time. Shall we stagger on beneath their heavy load? Shall we let them live forever in their gilded halls of crime, with our children forced to toil beneath their gold? Oh, we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will be when we all can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is run by labor, there'll be joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. When our cause is all triumphant and we've claimed our Mother Earth, and the nightmare of the present fades away, we shall live with love and laughter, we who now are little worth, and will not regret the price we have to pay. For we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will be when we all can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is run by labor, there'll be joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be.
Good times, good times. Yeah, we keep going. You know, we just take things as we go. I am going to put on some of CPI's work that has helped set the stage for today, some of our outreach and activism. I'm going to put that on, all right. Yeah, we'll put that on. Yeah. just show you what we've been doing for the last 3 years to make this happen. Here we go.
Russia is not our enemy. Russia is not our enemy. Russia is not our enemy.
The energy revenue to rebuild the industries of Russia, and he made Russia once again a strong economy. And that is why U.S. media demonizes Russia. That is why the U.S. government toppled the government of Ukraine in 2014 with the Euro-Maiden coup and installed a fanatically anti-Russian regime in Kiev. You know, I saw a CNN reporter claim that Ukraine was a peaceful country until now. Well, this is the monument in Donbass to all the children who have died of the shelling and the bombing being carried out by the U.S.-backed regime in Kiev. 14,000 plus people dead, children who have died. It hasn't been a peaceful country. The people of Donbass have been subject to 8 years of bombing, 8 years of shelling, 8 years of a food blockade, and Russia is now moving in to protect them and bring an end to this. The Wall Street money sharks hate Russia, they hate China, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and many other countries because they have governments that stand up to the international bankers and their monopolistic corporations.
And it's not a good situation. People are dying and it needs to end. And we need there to be a negotiation. We want there to be peace in Ukraine, and that means that our leaders sit down and negotiate. It doesn't mean that Boris Johnson gets on the phone and wrecks a peace deal just because he wants people to keep dying. Global food crisis spawned by a war. That's right. Russia is not our enemy. 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 Russia was with us in the fight against the Nazis in World War II. At the moments when America shows its true colors and is standing up for justice and truth, you'll notice that we're standing with Russia.
Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China.
It's time to stand for peace here at the United Nations. We are marching up to the religious rally. Russia and China are not our enemy.
Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China.
Peace with Russia. Peace with China.
Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China.
Peace with Russia. Peace with China.
Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia.
Youth festivals are very, very important to my organization in particular, the Center for Political Innovation. Every meeting that we have, we begin with the pledge. We've changed the word youth for people because we have people of all ages, but we begin, we raise our right hands, we pledge that we shall remember this unity forged at the end of the Second World War, not only today, not only this year, this week, but always, and the pledge goes on. But that is such a beautiful pledge that came out of the World Democratic Youth Federation. And I must say that the youth festivals represent the best, not just of this country, but of America. A time when we stood in solidarity with Russia to defeat fascism. And they're trying to erase that from American history.
I'm Caleb Maupin, the chair of the U.S. delegation, and he also represents the Center for Political Innovation.
Welcome, everybody. My name's Caleb Maupin. I'm the founder of the Center for Political Innovation. And in October, I was deeply honored when the youth office of the Russian Foreign Ministry reached out to me about forming a national preparatory committee for the upcoming World Youth Festival, set for March in Russia. As someone who attended the World Festival of Youth and Students in 2013 in Quito, Ecuador, someone who attended the festival that was held in Sochi in 2017, as an advocate of socialism, peace, and international cooperation, as an American patriot, as a Christian, and someone who strives to live according to the teachings of Jesus Christ, I considered this to be a great opportunity. However, It is the circumstances of our upcoming trip that bring us here today. As we meet here today, Jesse Neville, Penny Hess, and Omali Yeshitela have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. They are facing a possible 15 years in prison. Their trial date was just set for September. The Biden administration has charged them for doing what we are about to do, for going to an international conference in Russia. I'm the leader of the United States delegation. I'm representing the Center for Political Innovation. And I would like to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that dynamic interview you gave to Tucker Carlson, in which you showed many, many young Americans a different kind of leadership, because our politicians and our leaders in the United States, they speak in sound bites, they speak in terms of scandal and gossip, but you presented a long-term vision, a scientific view of statecraft, and by getting through to young Americans, you made a difference. Many people who would never have listened to anything you had to say or heard another perspective heard you because of that interview. Now, getting to my question, things between our two countries are not good at this point. You know, before we left, we had to have a press conference at the United Nations. We are concerned about being prosecuted. There are 3 Americans that have already been charged and are facing prosecution, possibly 15 years in prison, simply because they attended a conference like this in Russia, the Uhuru movement, they're called. And we are concerned because I know that I speak for the majority of the American people when I say that we do not want our tax money dumped into this conflict in Ukraine any longer. We do not want our country to continue to deteriorate internally while our leaders waste money on prolonging this war. I'm frightened by what the Biden administration is doing, not just in Ukraine, but also on Taiwan and on the Korean Peninsula. And I really do see gatherings like this as a potential road to peace. And what I have seen at this festival has blown my mind. The amount of young volunteers that you have here, people who have stepped up, who love their country and want to just come forward and put together dynamic events like this. What kind of role can events like this and young diplomacy activities like this play in helping set the stage for maybe changing the dangerous direction our leaders in the United States are taking things against the majority of the wishes of the majority of the people of our country? Thank you.
The United States of America is a huge and unique country. In its own way, over 300 years, in just 300 years, which is a small period of time compared to our history, but thanks to the talents of the Americans, it became a superpower, which is an obvious fact. We know outstanding American politicians, we know outstanding American business people, cultural activists, which is an obvious fact. We used to be allies during 2 world wars as we fought Nazism and fascism. What happened recently? After the war, after the alliance, the United States and the Soviet Union started dividing the world, and they did so successfully. And based on this balance of powers, they created international relations and created the modern system of international law. Then the Soviet Union ceased to exist for a number of reasons. I will not go into detail, but they were mainly internal reasons. There is one superpower remaining, represented by your country. The way your elites use this monopoly to global domination is dubious. In my opinion, the United States failed to bear this burden of responsibility that they happen to bear. They created monopoly, strengthened it. I don't mean the American people, I mean the ruling elites. While strengthening their monopoly, they soon faced a situation where the overwhelming majority of countries disliked it. And so, step by step, they it became obvious to everyone that there is resistance to the forming global order.
All right, so we're here at Trump Tower.
They told you these people are horrible. They told you these people are terrible, that they will never do anything good for us. There's a reason for that. It's called money. It's called power. They want to weaken you mentally. They want to capture your spirit, stomp you out, and tell you, why bother? Why get out of bed in the morning? Why do anything worthwhile? No.
Great again. This was a great moment when Trump talked to Kim Jong-un and started the process of peace on the Korean Peninsula. And we want to see peace not just with North Korea, but with Russia, with China, with many countries around the world. It is outrageous that billions of dollars is being spent on prolonging the war in Ukraine when our people can't get relief in North Carolina. People are left behind in Georgia and North Carolina. They can't get the relief they need. This is outrageous. Our government is more concerned with waging wars around the world than for caring for our own people. That we need a president who will put America first, a president who will bring peace around the world. Only peace can make America.
Big crowd of people. Huge crowd of people here to support Donald Trump, pouring in to watch the inauguration ceremony in the Capital One Arena. Yeah, we set up here and over there. How you feeling? How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. It was fun to pass out pamphlets at the hotel there. Everybody was asking for more.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We need to heal America as well. We need to pray for America. We need to make our country great again. We need to take over. The people need to take over to make our country better again. And I hope Trump can help us with that.
Donald Trump for one of the greatest moments of his first presidency, when he went to a country that America has technically been at war with since the 1950s and gave peace a chance. We want to make peace around the world.
We're here in front of the Spoon Bridge in Minneapolis to support peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. We have confronted our government multiple times.
We don't need this war. You know, we might not agree everything what Trump is doing, but we need peace. I don't want my child to be going in a war that's not ours. Our tax dollars not coming in our country. You know, the infrastructure is crappy. There's holes all over Chicago. You know, I'm sick of it.
A few people walking by, they look at the banner and they're trying to figure out if we're on the red team or the blue team, and they can't quite figure it out. Well, we're not on the eating team. We're on the team of the American working families. We're on the team of the American people. We're on the peace team. That's what team we're on.
Talks between Trump and Putin are the most important thing in the world right now. Way more important than anything these stupid rallies have been demanding. Hands off this, hands off that. We need hands off the thermonuclear button.
People have been very excited to hear something that isn't directly partisan, but rather demanding things that they need and want as people. It seems to me like people are very receptive of a message that is less oriented towards telling them which team to vote for.
Hands off the button. Hands off the button.
Yeah, so we're going to be out in the streets again, you know, and I got a few more things to do here, you know, but hey, if you want to join our stream, you are welcome to do it. Phil is waiting in the chat, so I just want to bring him in on just 1 second here. I do want to post the link one more time. I'm just taking calls tonight. This is an open phones show, to use radio terminology. And I'll just let anyone who wants to come on, because we got so much going on. I got some videos to show. I'll answer any questions people send. But yeah, good things are happening. But yeah, here's the link. And yeah, if you want to join the show, you just follow that link. You got to turn your webcam on to join the stream. All right. Phil, how you doing?
Hey, Caleb, how are you?
Good. You got your beard. I was almost going to call you Ayatollah Phil, right? You know, with your beard, right? You know, Ayatollah Phil. How you doing?
I am well, sir. Thank you. Totally psyched about tomorrow.
Yes, it is going to be good. It'll be small. You know, it's not going to be huge, but it's going to be important. And I felt so good. I'm going to show the signs one more time. Look at this. Look at this. Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. I'm charging the bullhorn. I got the bullhorn charged, and yeah, stuff is gonna happen tomorrow, and I'll be up bright and early.
I got dibs on the Tulsi sign.
Oh, well, we got 2 of them, so you'll definitely get to hold one. And we'll have the bullhorn, and yeah, we're gonna have a good crew of people coming out. And you know, I've reached out to a lot of people that are friends, CPI friends and allies, and all of that. It's gonna be a great day tomorrow. So thank you for joining us tomorrow, Phil, and thank you to everyone else who plans to come out. I'm not gonna read off names on here, and I also don't want to announce the location because we don't want the Ukrainians to show up and act crazy.
There are a lot of them here in New York.
Indeed, which doesn't make sense. Why don't they go back to Ukraine and fight then? You know?
Exactly.
You know?
If I may, I was wondering if I could ask your opinion on if Trump is able to make peace with Russia. What's the probability of him being able to make peace between Israel and Gaza, as well as North Korea?
Well, the Korea thing is very likely because at this point, the Korea stuff is tied intrinsically up with the Ukraine stuff. And I know this for a fact because I was in Russia. I was at the World Youth Festival, and we printed a whole book that we wrote, and Reverend Milhan wrote a chapter of it. Douglas Kim wrote a chapter of it, and we gave it to the North Koreans. And their response was basically, we're not talking to Americans right now. And now we know what that's about, is that there's North Korean soldiers that are in Russia and fighting, on the Russian side in the war. But yet, now that there's talk of peace, right? First of all, I don't know if you saw this. Kim Jong-un was in Russia just a few days ago. I don't know if you saw that, right? Because they were commemorating, they had a special ceremony to commemorate the liberation of the northern half of the Korean Peninsula by Soviet troops. And so Kim Jong-un was there with the representative of the Russian parliament. And they had a special ceremony to celebrate the liberation of Pyongyang and the liberation of North Korea by the Soviet troops in World War II, because that's the anniversary, just happened. So North and South Korea peace talks are intrinsically tied up with this. If USA and Russia can start getting along, USA and North Korea can start getting along. And they've already they took down the speakers, I
was just going to mention that, that you had mentioned on one of your streams a couple of nights ago that both sides took down their speakers.
Yeah. As far as Gaza, though, not looking good. I mean, Netanyahu is preparing for an all-out invasion of Gaza, which is pretty awful. Also, Iran is pretty fired up because they don't approve of this corridor. Part of the negotiation between Armenia and Azerbaijan was this corridor that's been created where U.S. military contractors are going to be set up. And Iran says they don't approve of that. So the Middle East is not looking so good, I'll be honest. Now, I'm hearing whispers that there is some talk of something, but the Middle East doesn't look as good. But the Korean Peninsula looks like it is intrinsically tied up with whatever happens tomorrow. So fingers crossed, and the fact that Alaska was purchased from Russia, that makes me think that, what we heard, that Ukraine is basically going to, purchase, that Russia will purchase Donbass from Ukraine as the deal. That makes sense to me. And that they chose it for that reason. But yeah, what do you think?
Well, I'm concerned that Zelensky, even if the U.S. and Russia reach a deal, that Zelensky is going to want to continue fighting. He said that he's not, succeeding, 1 inch of territory. And he was actually meeting with the British Prime Minister today, about continuing aid from the British, and a lot of the European countries aren't happy about this meeting, which just goes to show you, that Europe is not interested in peace, even though if the war expands, they're next because Russia is going to go and, look at it as a strategic move to keep their territorial rights and not allow Western European countries to, do some kind of counterattack or, counter move against Russia.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been the U.S. media's claim. I don't know where they're getting this from, this idea that Russia is going to, Ukraine is just the beginning and they're going to march into France and Germany and take over the whole world or something. And that doesn't match reality, but that's what the mainstream media has been pushing so hard since the beginning of this. But, I'm optimistic because Zelensky met with, there was a conversation between Zelensky and Trump that happened, not a public one. And after that, Trump made his announcement that the second meeting will involve Zelensky, right? And that was today from the Oval Office. I showed that earlier. So the fact that the White House says they talked to Zelensky, he's coming to this second meeting, that makes me think that Zelensky is ready to make peace. So we'll just have to see. But I'm glad you're going to join us tomorrow. Thank you, Tulsi. We'll see you in the streets, Phil. Be in touch. And dare to struggle, dare to win. All right. David Fox from Australia, from down under. How you doing, David?
Yeah, good. Yourself?
Well, I'm good. Again, watching this kind of like a deer in the headlights, trying to figure out, the best way we can intervene. Obviously, the rallies around the country are what we can do. But yeah, this is a moment full of possibility.
Exactly. And actually, on that, this is what really needs to be done at the moment, making these interventions. And I think it's important to you actually giving the alternative. This is what peace can achieve. Building the tunnel or the bridge over the Bering Strait. I sent you an email yesterday, a very interesting article about a major water infrastructure project leading from Alaska and northwest Canada all the way down through the US into Mexico. And this is what these sort of things can achieve. Instead of trillions of dollars on war, we can spend these trillions of dollars on proper development and economic development, win-win for everybody. And I'm actually currently writing an article at the moment for our group here in Australia. I'll put the link in the descriptions too when I'm off in the chat for the Great Southern Discussion Club already. But it's about moving forward. And I think what's happened here in Australia just recently with the Australian government turning around to recognise Palestine, I think that's a big shift forward. It's a big step forward in the right direction. And I think we've got to look at that. This is a good quantitative change happening outlook. We've still got a long way to go, sure, but we don't get everything what we want we're idealistically. But you can see there's a whole shift in the whole entire world, including and Australia included, away from this, away from the current Anglo-American finance global order that we've got in front of us at the moment. And what we're seeing here is a very significant shift. And I think, what's happening here in Australia and also no doubt over the United States and elsewhere, I think that's a positive change. And like, again, will it be the ideal what we want? No, not exactly. It'll happen over a course of time, but I think we've got to keep focused that way. That's a fantastic job. And when I saw the placards and that you had up, I thought that's great. And I think, hopefully a lot more people pay interest into this discussions with Putin and Trump over the weekend moving forward, because we do want peace. And we want to move forward with, like Australia and same with the US, UK, elsewhere. We're facing a low-wage police state with zero rights, and we don't want that at all. We want economic development, and we want to free ourselves from the clutches of finance. And I think it's this is one positive step in the right direction.
I would agree with that. I think this is a good positive step, and that. This project, the idea of a water project that's in Canada all the way down to Mexico, that's been around for a while, and that's a way of like addressing things, but not saying, oh, we just need to have a revolution or things are so bad, but putting forward implications of what can actually be done, right? And raising like, why don't our leaders do that, right? And that is a method of agitation, and it's a great way of doing things. I think they in classical Marxist terminology, they call it a transitional program or a transitional demand kind of thing that like, look, this is something that could actually happen. Why aren't our leaders doing it? And raising that. And of course, that would challenge the imperialist global order and all of that. So I'll be looking forward to your article. Maybe we can republish it. But the Great Southern Discussion Club, a lot of people from Australia watch these streams. You always make a call for me to send you, and people do, all the people so tell us about the Great Southern Discussion Club. Maybe I can put the website in the chat. What's the website?
It is just Great Southern Discussion Club. I don't know if you can Google it.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're having problems with Google as well. I think Google's on a thing to try and delete a few things, but we can certainly find through DuckDuckGo or another search engine. The Great Southern Discussion Club was actually all the CPI. A few of us who do watch these programs, and consistent viewers of your program and also followers of CPI. I think we tried to get something going. We've had hiccups and and setbacks and the whole lot here in Australia. And I think, we got together, and I think, first of all, the one we kicked off was doing the online study, especially out of the movement to the masses and what was applicable here to Australia. And we're still studying some of the CPI material. We just finished the one on Traore. And fantastic, because that's quite an inspirational book. And we're having a great discussion about that last Sunday. And we want Africa's Flame, an excellent book. And on others, we currently going for other material at the moment. We're going to look at crucialism, because I think, why couldn't we move forward in the past and everything else? I think, the psychology of crucialism, how it affected everyone here in Australia, and applying that. And I think with the Great Southern Discussion Club, we also decided to start writing articles, and Reese has been instrumental in developing the website. They're not long articles. We don't need to write out a whole thesis or some sort of reference book. What we do is just compile an easy look at, but what we want stuff written, we want material written so we can put on the national agenda as well, inviting others around. It is a slow haul though. I think we've all branched out, tried to outreach other organisations like the Australian Citizens Party, which is equivalent to LaRouche type people. And we do know them. We've got some really good relations with them. We need to step forward, but there's anyone else. And of course, this show, we'll obviously put the call out to other Australians if they're other Australian viewers. I had a meeting with someone early this week. Now he's interested and jumped on board. That's Jeff. And if he's watching, hello, he lives only just over an hour from where I live. And so that's good news. And we had a great discussion on Tuesday morning, and including him now. But it's all outreach work. Bit by bit, we'll slowly build ourselves up, I think, because in Australia here, I think we've had so many setbacks and for so long. And I think, the old habits, I think some people still continued on with, and we didn't want to just do the same old thing, start something and continue on the path like everyone else doing. And of course, CPI was the inspiration to work towards that. So I think, I had to be a bit realistic myself. I think, all right, well, let's just, gradual things will happen. I mean, we'd like to have the organisational capacity to do a lot more, but we just do what we can at the main time with a few of us. So, and then we can gradually, and a lot of it's outreach work. But I think what's been going on lately and thinking things through, it can't stop us from doing our own actions. Something like this meeting with Trump and Putin, it doesn't stop us. We may be if anyone's interested, if we wanted to do something like that, we could do something outside in Melbourne or whatever capital city, and we'll work from there.
All right. Well, it sounds like you're doing great work. I'm editing your speech from the convention. It was a tremendous presentation.
Yes.
And
I do apologize. I'm trying to find old material myself doing lives. I think a lot of stuff got deleted or disappeared, wasn't backed up. Look, I'll put the call out to others. If you've got old live material of me, I didn't really record much back in my early years, but I'll see what I can still find, and I'll get that material for you.
Yeah, well, it's a great presentation you gave with the Eureka flag and everything. So thank you. Thank you for everything you've done, and thank you for your hard anti-imperialist work down in Australia. So thank you. And dare to struggle, dare to win. That's the great David Fox. Yep. That was David. David is absolutely amazing, and he is a lifelong, dedicated anti-imperialist. He keeps going. This is an open stream, so anyone can join. I do have to see your face. That is my rule. I have to be able to see your face. So you have to turn your camera on. But other than that, you can join. So I do want to show just some video from our recent convention. We had the Center for Political Innovation, national gathering, our national gathering. I'm just going to show, some of that, and then from there, we will, at that point, we will take any other calls that we've got. I've got other things to talk about, so here we go.
Shall never more be wasted on war.
Shall never more be wasted on war.
Thank you. Now, if you can all please remain standing, please. We're going to do an opening ceremony, our flag ceremony.
Cultural development conditioned thereby. Once Confucius was taking part in the winter sacrifice, and after the ceremony was over, he went for a stroll along the top of the city gate, and he sighed mournfully. And his disciple, who was by his side, asked, "Why do you sigh?" And Confucius replied, "I shall never see in person when the great way is practiced, when the world is shared by all alike, when worthy and able are promoted to office, and men and women practice good faith and live in affection. They do not regard as parents only their own parents, or as children only their own children. The elderly find a fitting close to their lives, and the able bodies all have proper fulfilling work, and the young are provided with an education,
and the widows, the orphans, and the sick are all properly cared for. In this age, people hate to see goods lying about in waste, but they don't hoard them for themselves. And they dislike the thought that their energy and ability is not fully used, but they use their strength not for personal selfish gain. In this age, evil plotting does not exist, and thieves and rebels do not arise, so that people can leave their doors unlocked. And this will be the age of great unity. And those are the words of Confucius. But in 1875, Karl Marx wrote, "Right can never be higher than the economic structure of society and its cultural development conditioned thereby." In a higher phase of communist society, after the enslaving subordination of the individual to the division of labor, and therewith the antithesis between mental and physical labor has vanished. After labor has become life's prime want, not only a means of life, after the productive forces have increased with the all-around development of the individual, and the springs of cooperative wealth flow more abundantly, only then can the narrow horizon of bourgeois right be crossed in its entirety, and society inscribe on its banners, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. And that last phrase there, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, many people don't realize this, but that's actually a biblical allusion. Marx was referring to the book of Acts. And the book of Acts, chapter 2, 44, verse 44 through 47, says that all that believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they continued daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house, singing of heart and praising God, and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily the number that should be saved. The book of Revelations talks of how God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, nor any more pain, for all the former things have passed away. And Jesus told his followers, "The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which is indeed the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among the herbs, and becometh a tree, so that birds of the air can come and lodge in its branches thereof." Now, what I'm saying here is that there's always been an understanding within human beings that we have it within us to build a world free from so much of the suffering and oppression and degradation that we see around us. We have it within us to build beautiful things. Ants have been making their ant farms the same way for thousands of years. Bees have been making their beehives the same way for thousands of years. But just 6, 7, 8,000 years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones. No other species has the ability to reinvent its relationship with nature the way human beings do. But yet, we live in a time where human progress is being held back. Human progress is being restrained because a small group of bankers and billionaires in Wall Street and in London want to stay at the top of the world. And we need to be very clear that they are keeping the world poor and sowing chaos and instability around the world and fomenting wars and injustice so that they can keep themselves at the top, so that they can stay rich. And this system, the founders of the country fought against the British Empire, and they referred to it as the English system. Henry Charles Carey, who was an advisor to Abraham Lincoln, called it the English system. And Vladimir Lenin called it imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. And in addition to that, now in Russia and in China, they're talking a lot about geopolitics and civilizations of the land and empires of the sea and thalassocracy and these empires based on controlling trade routes and keeping countries impoverished, holding back development. Whatever you want to call it, that system, globalism, imperialism, that system is the main barrier to human progress. It is the main thing preventing us from building the beautiful world that human innovation and human creativity is capable of building. And the Center for Political Innovation is an organization dedicated to trying to build a movement here in the United States to oppose globalism, imperialism. We need a government of action to fight for working families. And we see what's happening in the world today. And I know, as a patriotic American, that the only future my country has is to join the new economy that is rising around the world. As a result of anti-colonial revolutions in the 20th century, a number of countries have begun an independent course of development. And the BRICS economy is very exciting, and the Belt and Road Initiative is very exciting, and the Eurasian Economic Union is very exciting, and people are being lifted from poverty all across the planet. And instead of joining with this new, innovative, exciting economy, our leaders have decided that they're going to try and go to war with it and destroy it. And at the same time, our country is falling apart internally. Our bridges and our highways are decaying. We're having wildfires because our electrical systems are not in proper order. We've got an opioid addiction crisis. We've got water not being properly purified. America's crumbling from within. And this is the logical trajectory of a system where a small, wealthy elite are able to dominate and make decisions. And there's a widespread understanding in this country that the people that run the country are not working in the interests of humanity, and they're certainly not working in the interests of the people in this country. They're working in the interests of an international system. People are not being sent to get shot in the Middle East to help people in Illinois or Pennsylvania or Texas or New Jersey. They're getting shot to serve the profits of a wealthy elite. And that's something that people in the red states understand. That's something that people in the blue states understand. That's something that people that are woke understand. That's something that people that are MAGA understand. People in America know something's not right. Our freedoms are being taken away. Our leaders are pushing us into more and more international confrontations and wars, and the living standard is going down. And what we need is a movement to fight for working families and align and restructure the United States so that we can be part of the exciting growth-based economy around the world, an economy based on physical economy and real economic growth, not speculation and derivative rip-off schemes and the profits of billionaire monopolists. And our organization, the Center for Political Innovation, we have worked very, very hard to try and bring this consciousness. And I just want to go over briefly what got us here today, right? Because it was last July, we set the date, July 12th, 2025, to be the day that we had our next national convention. And a lot's happened between now and then. 1 year ago, we were in a little bit of a rut organizationally. We decided we were going to set a date. We were going to wait a year and have our convention, do some outreach, etc. And shortly after that happened, something very strange took place. Amazon.com made a pretty big mistake. And a book that the Center for Political Innovation, our organization, published, a book called Kamala Harris and the Future of America, that had been on sale for 4 years. A book criticizing Kamala Harris, talking about her ties to the war makers and how she set up and was a ruthless prosecutor imprisoning people in the state of California. That book had been in print for 4 years with no issue. But on the very day she became the nominee of the Democratic Party for president, Amazon decided to ban the book. On the very day. What a coincidence. And when it became clear that our Center for Political Innovation book about Kamala Harris was banned, and it was pretty obviously a political decision, outrage swarmed. And Jimmy Dore was talking about it, and was discussed by Kim Iverson, it was discussed by InfoWars, it was discussed by all kinds of people, and people on the left and people on the right. All kinds of people wanted to know what was in our book that we published about Kamala Harris and who she really was. Why was it that on the very day she got nominated, they banned it from Amazon.com? And so we put it up on Lulu, we put it up on some other websites, and it started selling, and 7 days later, Amazon backed down and put it back up, and that book sold in huge numbers. And we never quit while we're ahead. And the Democratic National Convention was happening here in Chicago. So what did we do? We decided to use the money from the book sales to print the book in bulk. And we distributed 1,000 copies of the book in the streets of Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. And actually, stand up if I mention your name. Gabby and John, a friend of ours named Phil from New York, they all came to Chicago to distribute this book. And outside the Democratic National Convention, over 1,000 copies of our Kamala Harris book was distributed. We also had another pamphlet called Do You Believe in Growth that we had written for the Libertarian Party convention we distributed. And then at that point, after we'd gotten quite a bit of attention from our book, we decided that we wanted to insert a pro-peace message into the election conversation. And the best thing that Donald Trump did in his first term in office was go and try to make peace with North Korea. Yeah. It was the best thing he did. And so we decided we were going to boost the pro-peace aspect of Trump's campaign. And we had this beautiful banner printed, and Briggy and Noah came down to New York, and we unfurled it in front of Trump Tower. We unfurled this, and we launched what we called our Operation Peace MAGA. And we had this on the streets of New York City all throughout the election cycle. And we actually got a great amount of help from the Manhattan Family Church and Reverend Milhan Stevens. They helped us get the message out. And we were also very proud to be official sponsors of Rage Against the War Machine 2, a pro-peace demonstration in Washington, D.C. that was organized by Angela McCurdle, the Libertarian Party. And then, in the middle of the election cycle, myself and John McCarthy, we decided that we had to go to Florida because there was a very, very important legal case taking place. The People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Chairman Omali Yeshitela had been indicted, not for any crime, but just for their free speech about Russia, just because they had this socialist group in Florida and in Missouri that was advocating peace with Russia. They'd been indicted and charged with being Russian agents. So we went down to Tampa, and we were in the courtroom during the opening of the trial. We were there at the sentencing with other people that were very concerned about the civil liberties implications of this case. They were trying to make it illegal to advocate peace with Russia. The Biden administration was going out of their way to target anti-war activists, and it was really important that people stood with the Uhuru movement. And Tucker Carlson spoke out in support of the Uhuru movement, and we were very happy to say that they are not in prison at this time. They were acquitted on the main charge of being Russian agents, and they received not one day in jail and not one dime. We expect their conviction to be overturned. Yes. Another great thing happened, which is that we met somebody new, a woman from Minneapolis named Penny. And Penny kind of debuted herself in our organization by confronting Ilhan Omar.
We would like to know, as American people, why you continue to support sending billions of taxpayer dollars to Nazis in Ukraine to start a nuclear war with Russia. China is not our enemy.
I need you to leave, please, ma'am.
China's not our enemy. Russia's not our enemy. No more money for rich men's wars.
Take your stuff.
No more money for rich men's wars. No more money for rich men's wars.
It was great. Yes, it was great. So after Trump won the election, we decided to write a letter to President Trump, and we urged Donald Trump to be the peace president that he had promised to be on the campaign trail. And we said, look, if you want to be a loved president, if you want to be someone who goes down in American history, bring the troops home from around overseas, and spend money on jobs and schools and healthcare in America, and free the political prisoners. And that letter we wrote got quite a bit of circulation, and we decided that this banner had made such an impact, we decided to bring it to the inauguration. So we went to Donald Trump's inauguration in Washington, D.C., and we had this banner out in front of the Capital One Arena, and we printed a pamphlet called A New Day for America, calling for Trump to be a peace president. We distributed over 2,000 copies of that pamphlet at the inauguration. After Trump was inaugurated, we got a new intelligence director, Tulsi Gabbard. I went to her confirmation hearing in Washington, D.C. I sat in the room as she was answering questions from senators who were just outraged that she had said that we should have peace around the world and end the regime change wars. What's interesting is that according to Epoch Times, Trevor Loudon of the Epoch Times says that Tulsi Gabbard is heavily influenced by the Center for Political Innovation.
She also has some connections to the Center for Political Innovation, which is a very pro-Russian outfit run by a man called Caleb Maupin.
So, who am I to argue with the Epoch Times, right? So, we did 2 workshops this spring. We did a workshop in Minneapolis and a workshop in Los Angeles. Our workshop in Los Angeles was organized by Dan. Stand up, Dan. Yeah. And it was a great workshop. Dan is very active with Natural Health First and other community groups. He's been a long-time alternative media figure with local access television, et cetera, in Los Angeles. And it was a great group of people who would never go looking for this message. People that were not the kind of people that would find us on the internet as a weird niche, but rather people who were very new to it and really liked what we had to say. It was a really great workshop. It was some great time, some great music, some great food. And we also had a workshop in Minneapolis. Penny organized our workshop in Minneapolis, which was great. It was really, really exciting. What was great about it was, it was a small workshop. We had about 20 people there, but there were about 15 protesters outside. I have never felt so important. The local Antifa was outside with signs all about me and talking about how much they hated us and internet memes and all of that. I've never felt so important in my life. It was a great moment. It really went to show how what we do is really important. There are forces out there that are watching us and very worried about our pro-peace message catching on with the American people. The fact that there was a crowd of protesters outside trying to shut down our workshop. And Penny did a great job handling that workshop under pressure. Thank you, Penny. Thank you. Another great thing that happened this spring I guess it wasn't a great thing, but what we did in response, or what was done in response, was great. But NATO had its anniversary celebration in Dayton, Ohio, and we're not thrilled about that. But they decided at the main library in Dayton, Ohio, that they would have a public debate about whether or not the USA should stay in NATO. And the organizers, I guess they made the mistake of picking Jeff Young, our member from Kentucky, to represent the anti-NATO position. And he did a tremendous job. He completely shut down the pro-NATO arguments. It was beautiful. So we're going to pause that for a moment. We will resume, but we do have another person joining the stream. Hey, Noah, how you doing?
Hey, Caleb, what's going on?
Well, not much. Obviously, big meeting in Alaska tomorrow, big rallies around the country, but I'm just here chilling in my lovely Brooklyn apartment. I just saw that apparently I've made a supporter of the Revolutionary Communist Party who lives in Berlin, Germany, quite angry. So she's made about 17 Facebook statuses about me, really angry that I've disrespected Baba-Vakian or something. So that's amusing to me. And Sheila's welcome to come on too. If you're watching Sheila, Sheila in Germany just made 17 Facebook statuses. She can join as well if she wants to come on and talk to me. I don't quite understand what she's upset about, but that I just logged on to Facebook and saw that Sheila's quite mad. But yeah, go ahead.
If you read. If they actually read a letter to Baba-Vakian and didn't just say that's an uncomradely critique. You say a lot of nice things about him and what he's done, and I don't know. I guess they're trying to get that woke money.
Yeah. Now, is this confirmed? Putin just arrived in Alaska. Is that confirmed? That he actually has arrived? Is that? Let's see. I hope that is the case. I just want to confirm that. But if that is the case, I'm very happy. Obviously, the meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. I know that one Russian plane is already there. The Russian finance minister is there. I'm not seeing confirmation of this. I feel like RT would be all over that, and I'm not seeing anything on the RT page. Yeah, I see RT has arrived, but I'm not seeing confirmation of that. But we'll see. But go ahead. What else is on your mind, Noah?
No, I'm just, my mind is set on Saturday and the demonstrations we're going to be having in Boston. Got a few people out there. We're getting the signs printed. I went out and I bought a megaphone today. I think it's going to be something. I'm not sure what the reaction exactly will be, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's important. We got to carry out operations, right? And we've got to be out there. And the point of going out in the streets is that people who would never go looking for this will see you, right? Because, obviously, if we get on the internet, people that are interested in our little, thing and that are part of our little space will trickle in or whatever. But the idea is that we go out and the public, random people who just happen to be there will see us and see what we're saying and hear what we have to say, maybe look into what we're about. That's the point. They are quickly taking control of the internet. This channel has been demonetized and very heavily suppressed. And part of what they're doing, I mean, the Nick Fuentes stuff is a great example, right? Nick Fuentes is a snake, but there's so many people on the right who are critical of Israel now. So they've got somebody who gives voice to that, but is absolutely toxic, who dominates those spaces, right? And they've done that in every space, in the libertarian space and the left anti-imperialist space. And that's the game. And that, for a while we could count on being online. People would find us, people would see us and all of that. But we have to just go out and build the movement now. And that's why doing this in real life stuff is important. And also, we want to build a movement of people who want to go out and do stuff in real life, which you have done more than anybody. I mean, you do street outreach. You're about to have a rally. We're headed to Detroit for the Palestine conference at the end of the month. I mean, we want to build a movement of people who want to do stuff, not just people who want to listen to a podcast, right? If you're looking to be if you're just looking for entertainment, I mean, this probably isn't the place to go, right? I don't have any silly costumes to put on, and I'm not going to play an instrument. I can't tap dance. This isn't a good entertainment thing. You should
no green screen, not even any wigs or fancy makeup like ContraPoints.
I know. So if you're just looking to be entertained, you're not in the right place. I want to recruit you. That's what this whole YouTube channel is about. That's what I want to recruit you to join CPI and become an activist. And we've done that, right? There's plenty of people from our audience who we've found and transformed into organizers and activists. So that's the point. So, I'm quite excited. What is the atmosphere like in Boston?
Well, I'm not sure exactly. I think people are hopeful about what's going on. I haven't really talked to a lot of people lately, to be honest with you. I will say that another thing that's important about doing the in-person outreach and stuff like that, beyond talking to new people and meeting new people, is that it helps you cement relationships with people that you already know. And I think that having this demonstration with the people that we're having, and they see that we are capable of doing this kind of stuff, is going to be really, really helpful in, building that relationship. One of the churches we're working with, I'm going to have to go to Sunday service more frequently. It's going to be good.
No, I think it's going to be great. And that, look, Tulsi Gabbard already reads our stuff, right? We know that, right? She read the Kamala Harris book very clearly. On top of that, somebody who's a friend of Tulsi Gabbard's came and accepted an award at our convention. And we're going to be out in the streets with these really neat placards. Let me just show them again, because I'm just so happy about how they turned out. Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi, Center for Political Innovation. We are showing to people within the state apparatus who want to do good that we are useful, that we can get things done. And there's a division in the ruling class. And just like, back in the day, the Communist Party was a friend of Roosevelt. When Roosevelt was wanting to have an anti-fascist alliance with the Soviet Union, the Communist Party had Roosevelt's back and the labor unions and all of that. We know Tulsi wants to make peace, and that she doesn't, want to go along with the war lobby and what they're doing. So we're showing that we've got your back, Tulsi. We'll be in the streets to back you up when you do the right thing. Now, when you're supporting Israel, things like that, we're not going to be on your side. But, that's how these things work, and that we are showing that we are capable of carrying out operations at very short notice as well. So that's what I'm happy about. And also, this African leader, Ibrahim Traore, is a very important emerging leader, and we are the main voice supporting him on the streets of America. That's also very important. We are playing a quite important role, and we're developing a network of people that can carry out operations. We're meeting people around the country. We're doing the work, right? This isn't internet entertainment. No wigs, no tap dancing, no sarcastic songs. We're just doing it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm happy that we're doing it. So there you go. And the Uhuru movement. I will mention this. I was on a very important Zoom call today with people from the Uhuru movement and allied organizations about launching a campaign to repeal the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which is very important. Very, very important. And on that call with people from the Uhuru 3 and others, I actually raised the idea that we reach out to everyone who's been charged under it recently, right? Which includes a lot of people from the ruling class, from the mainstream of the ruling class. And we just point out that this law is unconstitutional, right? The idea that you can't have a relationship with somebody in another country, and if you do and you say something that you feel that the government feels might help them or something, that's a crime. That's ridiculous. It's not constitutional. You're an American, you can say whatever you want, right? You can say whatever you want. And we're about to, there's the process has started of a campaign to repeal the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and we're invited to be heavily involved in that campaign. And we were out in front of the courthouse in Tampa, and there you go. So I'm excited about that too. So
we were outside of the courthouse in Tampa. We've worked heavily with lots of people who have been suppressed by the FBI. We've had Scott Ritter speak at our events, etc. I mean, we are the number one voice of that. I mean, beyond people who have actually been prosecuted. But that's a great idea, reaching out to, there was that Korean American lady. I don't remember her name.
Sumi Terry. Terry. And the charges have not been dropped. I expected that when Trump got in, he would drop the charges, but she's still indicted apparently. But even Eric Adams was charged. They tried to use that law against him and say he was an agent of Turkey. Right now, Trump did clear him, just pardoned him, of everything. But the Biden administration, they just dug through the legislation. What can we use to just go after people? And they had a list of political enemies of Biden, and they went after them under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And there was some of that was done with the special counsel Robert Mueller. He did that. He went after some of Trump's allies like Paul Manafort and others with FARA. It's absolutely absurd, and it needs to be repealed. It just needs to be repealed. It's that simple. So yeah.
Now FARA I had heard that it was originally used to prosecute like Nazi sympathizers in the U.S.
But never was.
But I've also heard that it was like a Red Scare thing. That
it was passed at that time in 1938, and that was what it was supposedly for. But they never used it to charge anybody. So, but that was the auspices of when it was passed, right? Was that, Hitler had a lot of lobbyists, and there were a lot of American industrialists like Henry Ford and the Morgan.
There's a whole Woody Guthrie song about it.
Yeah. There were a lot of Nazi sympathizers in America. And so the Roosevelt administration passed that as a way to say we could potentially do something about it. They didn't end up prosecuting Nazis until the war began. And, when the U.S. government actually declares war, at that point, the Bill of Rights is on hold, right? I mean, there is no free speech. That's how they did Japanese internment. And they did prosecute a number of Nazi collaborators once the war had started. William Dudley Pelley, Father Coughlin, and some of them went to prison, like Father William Dudley Pelley, the Silver Legion guy. He went to prison, but Father Coughlin did not. And there was something called like the Mothers Campaign. It was like German American women or something. They did not. They ended up getting like a mistrial, and they didn't end up going to jail. But that was not under the FARA. That was under I guess it's just illegal to protest when they actually declare war. The country basically becomes a military dictatorship. The Espionage Act is a law that they used during World War I. And what was interesting is they used it first against people they were alleging were German sympathizers and people that were working with the Germans. And one person they went after was Agnes Smedley. Who is the great, she eventually became a Maoist communist, but she was a feminist and a socialist. And she was involved in campaigning for India to get its independence from Britain. And she apparently had gone to India, was having events, in New York City and other things about India's struggle for independence. And they arrested her and held her in federal prison pending trial. Eventually dropped the charges when the trial, when the war ended. But they alleged that she was a German agent. And then after the war, they started using the Espionage Act, claiming that people were funded by the Bolsheviks. And eventually the Supreme Court did step in and say the Espionage Act, you can't use it unless it applies. You can't really use it against people unless there's a war. And, but Eugene Debs, I believe it was the Espionage Act is what they got him under, right? During the war, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it? I think it might have just been that he was protesting. I can look it up real quick.
Yeah, but they said that his speech somehow, it was like sedition, or maybe it was the Sedition Act. But that's what they ended up jailing Debs for. And he was in prison for quite a long time after World War I.
It was 10 counts of sedition.
Sedition, yeah, the Sedition Act, which pretty wild. Brian Becker invoked the Sedition Act against January 6th. After the January 6th thing, Brian Becker and the law firm that his wife runs ran articles claiming that the Trump supporters should all be jailed for sedition. And at that point, Max Blumenthal and a lot of the people, working with him said, "Are you crazy? Like, do you not know the history of the Sedition Act?" Like, it was absolutely wild. So yeah, anything else you want to share with the audience tonight, Noah?
There was nothing really on my mind, actually. I just saw that you were streaming and thought I would hop on and have a little bit of a conversation. So,
all right. Well, good to see you. Keep up the hard work. I'm looking forward to a trip to Detroit to get Tulsi books out. I'm looking forward to our rallies tomorrow. And yeah, dare to struggle, dare to win. Thank you, Noah. Thank you. Great. And now we've got another great CPI member, Dan in Los Angeles. How's it going, Dan?
Great. Can you see me?
I can see you. I can hear you. I can see you and I can hear you. So there you go. How you doing?
Okay, good. Because I guess my connection's not all that great, but that's nothing new. But yeah, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. You know, I seem to have made this woman from Berlin, Germany, pretty angry, but I'm doing okay. Yeah. You know, Kinkle says much love, gives a shout out, says much love to you. I think you got to meet her at the convention, and she's also in California. I don't know how close she is to you, but she's certainly in California. But yeah,
she's out there in the Joshua Tree area, you know, that U2 made an album about, you know. That's quite a ways away from here, but okay, we'd love you if you come to LA Saturday. I mean, we're doing it. We're going downtown on an overpass above the 110 Freeway West. So and more. We're not going to give away every little thing online, obviously. But I just wanted to come on for one thing and say thank you for doing this, because it gives us a platform for actually being able to get out there and be peace activists. I've been a peace activist for 20 plus years, and any opportunity I have to really make a difference, I jump on it, because we got to stop this craziness and this insanity. You know, everything from the killing to the propaganda. It's not good for anyone, not even really the people at the top. And we need to send a message out, you know, as far and wide as we can, create videos so that it goes out even further, to let people know that why would you not be happy with peace with Russia or peace with anybody? I mean, that to me, that's just like saying, if you don't want peace with Russia, if you have internal conflict, you don't want peace with yourself. That makes no sense. We should want peace any way we can actually see that happen and make a part of that, you know, be a part of creating that. Why would you not want that? People spend way too much time looking on personalities and just, you know, yeah, it's amazing to me how some people would think you support someone 100% just because, you know, you support peace with Russia. It makes no sense, right? You know, if somebody does something, I mean, I supported Bernie when he said the right things. When he shifted gears and did what I felt was not the correct thing for the country, I stopped supporting him. That's what we do, right? We use critical thinking skills so that we understand, but we have to do that with the knowledge as much as possible, being willing to admit when we're wrong, but also be willing to embrace what everybody has to say, including this woman in Germany. You know, talk to us, please. Yeah. Tell us if there's something that we don't know. We want to know that. That's part of our role, right, Caleb?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're all for engagement, you know, and that's part of why CPI, we're not a political party. You can be a member of any political party you want and be in CPI. You know, we're trying to educate about anti-imperialism and a government of action to fight for working families. We're trying to raise educational you know, demands everywhere we can. We're just trying to represent anti-imperialism in the future that we could have if we got out of this system of imperialism and degrowth. And, you know, if we actually move toward having a rationally organized economy and unleashing human creativity, that's what we're all about. And that's what we're doing. And you're doing a great job of that in LA. I know you're having discussions at bookstores and you're getting together with folks from the Natural Health First community, folks from different communities. So anything you want to say about this weekend's rally in LA? Obviously, you don't want to give away the location for security reasons, but yeah.
Well, one of the things that we're going to be doing is another thing that we're excited about is that we like to talk about the economic connection, because very few, even of our allies, you would say, and friends that we have in our communities here, you know, that are pro-Palestinian and, you know, anti-war and for peace, they don't want to talk about economics. And I know you shared even a video from RevCom the other day, and there wasn't one thing in that whole nothing about economics, and everything is connected to economics. So one of the things that we're going to do here is talk about the peace bridge, and we're going to chant, we want the peace bridge as well, for economic purposes. So it's not just peace to end the obvious things that everybody knows about, killing and, as you talked about earlier, the Vietnam War and all that awful. It's the same thing now. We want to stop the murder of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and thousands of Israelis. We want to stop all of that. Syrians, Libyans, Lebanese, wherever people are, where there's struggling going on. But we also need to look at the economic factors behind that, and also realize that we offer ideas for solutions, and not just we want peace. That's, I think, the thing I wanted to add to what we're doing this weekend, which is what we try to do with every meeting, every discussion, everything that we want to get behind, is to make sure that the economic part gets mentioned and emphasized too, because that is the solution. Once you get to the economics of it, then you can actually really have a long-term success story to talk about, right?
I agree. Well, you're doing great work, Dan. Give a shout out to Ishmael. Give a shout out to Elba. Give a shout out to everybody, all the great people out there in LA.
And can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Anybody here in the chat, if you're from LA, please send me an email to CPI, spelling it out, Los Angeles, LOSANGELES 24 @gmail.com.
All right.
And I'll get back to you and let you know where we're going to be, and we'll talk some more. Thank you.
There we go. CPI Los Angeles 24 @gmail.com. You're doing great work out there in LA. Thank you for the hard work that you've done, Dan.
Thank you, Kate. I really appreciate everyone. See you soon.
See you soon. Very good. Yeah. Dan is absolutely amazing. He is a hardworking guy, and he is all about building the organization that we need. So yeah, this is an open stream, which means that if you've got a question, you can send it. Now we do have a new mechanism for you to send your questions. You can also send it via Buy Me a Coffee, right? Caleb Maupin, you can do that as well. And you can just join the stream. We are allowing people to just hop on and just join the conversation. Just join us. So yeah, good stuff. Join the stream. We'd love to have you on and chat with us. So yeah, if anyone else wants to join, I do want to finish the video I was just showing. So I will continue the video from our convention. Then I've got some other stuff to do, and yeah, we'll just keep going. Beautiful, and many people heard that anti-war message from our member, our lead founder of the Kentucky Party, etc. Thank you, Jeff. You did a great job. Now, the bombing of Gaza has continued, and one organization has done more to stand with the Palestinians than any other, and that's the Houthis of Yemen. The Ansar Allah movement of Yemen, they were blocking ships, a picket line in the Red Sea to protect the Palestinians, to insist that until Israel stops its bombing of Gaza, they're going to block ships from going to Israel. So in response to that, we decided that we needed to tell people who the Houthis really are. And so we published in bulk a book that we wrote called Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For? And we distributed that book in bulk all over the country to tell people about the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen and the history there, and how this movement that is really the conscience of the whole world standing with the Palestinians, where it came from, their religious origins as Shia Muslims, etc. That was one operation that we carried out. I was recently in Russia. I got to attend the Global Digital Forum, meet with people from many different countries, South Africa and Uganda and Vietnam and China. And there is this whole new economy rising, and it was really an honor to be in Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, to meet people from the New World and kind of be the voice of the side of America that rejects the low-wage police state. One thing we've been making a point of doing lately, in light of very unfortunate events, is standing in solidarity with Iran. And our member Noah Shank has recently started appearing on Press TV as a regular commentator, representing the United States when it comes to Iran. And another thing that we did is a couple weeks ago, we decided to have a demonstration to honor the great African leader Ibrahim Traoré, the leader of Burkina Faso. And this great African leader, he's almost the model of the kind of government we need. He's investing in his people, he's providing education, he's overseeing a farming boom, so much agricultural expansion, providing health care. Every woman who goes to the doctor to have a child in Burkina Faso, it is totally free. He's providing a stipend to students so that they can get their college education and not have to work a job on the side. They're getting a stipend. He's just the hero of the African continent. And when he was demonized by certain figures within the Pentagon, there was a national day of action, and people on every continent, but especially on the African continent, were marching in the streets saying, "Hands off Ibrahim Traoré." It was an amazing expression, and we were very proud to join our brothers and sisters in the Uhuru movement in standing with Ibrahim Traoré. And we had a small rally here in Chicago, to support Ibrahim Traoré with our banner. And it went viral in Africa, and it was viewed all over the African continent, on YouTube, on television channels. People who were in chat groups that had nothing to do with our organization or our politics were seeing images of this rally, because Ibrahim Traoré is the kind of leader that many people in Africa are saying is the future. And the Union of Sahel States is very, very important. And that kind of brings us back to a point, what is Ibrahim Traoré? What is he, right? He's a Muslim, right? He's religious, he's a Muslim. He talks about Marxism, but he's not an old school communist. You can call him a Pan-Africanist, you can call him a black nationalist. It doesn't matter what he is, that's the kind of leader we need. And we like to call that kind of leadership that invests in people and human creativity and builds people up and is pro-growth. We call that innovationism. And that's the idea. Now, coming up, we've got a lot of important work to do. We have a couple tasks we're going to be taking on in the coming year. Obviously, after this event, we're going to get together and decide what our focus will be. But one thing we really need to do is to oppose the danger of political violence. Because if there's one thing that will prevent a real mass movement, bringing the country together, it'll be violence and killing. The glorification of the murder of Brian Thompson and the celebration of the alleged crime of Luigi Mangione is extremely dangerous. In Italy, in the 1970s and 80s, they were getting ready to leave NATO. And then they fomented the years of lead. And we know with Operation Gladio, the CIA was funding fascist groups and funding the Red Brigades, and there were kidnappings and killing, and it led to the population being weary and demoralized, and that's why Italy is still in NATO. And a similar thing happened in Jamaica in the 1980s. And if you look at it, creating a situation where people are afraid to get politically active because they might get shot, creating a situation where they reinforce this false polarization of woke versus MAGA, red state versus blue state, religious versus secular, that's not the polarization we need. The polarization we need is the overwhelming majority in this country that oppose the wars, that want economic growth, and want to protect our civil liberties. The polarization is that majority in all states, from all backgrounds, coming together and opposing the billionaire monopolies in their drive for World War III. That's the polarization we need. And political violence is one way to make sure that it doesn't happen. And I believe that the celebration and glorification of political violence we're seeing all across social media is not accidental. This is an operation to demoralize, to make the population weary, and to get us to just kind of go along and accept what everyone in this country pretty much doesn't like, the way the country is going. One particular organization that we are certainly critical of is a group called the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And they play a particularly bad role. We, at the same time, we protect their civil liberties. They were recently subpoenaed by the U.S. Congress, and the U.S. Congress shouldn't be looking through their emails, and we would oppose any violation of their privacy rights. We are in favor of civil liberties. But at the same time, they've played quite a negative role. And little known story is that we all remember what happened when Donald Trump was sworn into office the first time, right? There was all kinds of violence on the streets of Washington, D.C. Cars burned, people were, violent, etc. Well, we caught on to what was happening and who was promoting it. and it was the Party for Socialism and Liberation had reserved the permits, and they were going to organize a demonstration that would have facilitated another bloodbath in Washington, D.C. When Trump took the oath. And so what did we do? We put out a press release that got widely circulated, and I appeared on George Galloway's television show, and we called on PSL to cancel that demonstration, to not have violence in the streets of Washington, D.C. when Donald Trump took office. Want peace, but I'm very concerned about what the Answer Coalition, led by Brian Becker, is planning. They have staged and got permits for a demonstration that is taking place on that day, and they say it's going to be peaceful, but we saw what happened last time Trump took office. And we know that this demonstration they are planning is going to be utilized by provocateurs, by Antifa elements to try and taint the Trump presidency with violence. The Answer Coalition needs to cancel their demonstration that is taking place on Trump's inauguration. They need to call it off so that they cannot facilitate the provocative actions being planned by the pro-NATO faction of the deep state. So my hope is that the Answer Coalition, which claims to be an anti-war organization, will cancel their demonstration, their rally that is basically going to become a space for provocateurs working on behalf of NATO to destabilize Washington, D.C. If they are truly anti-war, they need to cancel their demonstration. That is my call for the Answer Coalition, for the Palestine activists. They need to call off the provocative demonstration planned for Trump's Inauguration Day. And we raised the alarm, and when Inauguration Day happened, the demonstration that they had was miles away from downtown, and there was not a bloodbath in Washington, D.C., and we think we had something to do with that, and we're very proud of that. The cold weather probably helped too, but there you go. So we're going to pause that briefly. We're almost done with that video because we have another guest who's coming on. Charles, welcome.
Hey, folks. Hi, Caleb.
Hi.
I'm a new, I guess, lurker.
Okay.
I noticed you through Jamal.
Okay.
Morning show. I'm on there usually every morning.
Oh, nice.
I really loved. I gotta confess, I feel like I kind of woke up from the Matrix, like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think I followed certain narratives, and I always was questioning, like, why are we doing this thing with Russia? It's just distressing as a father of a 14-year-old to think, oh my God, are we heading this way? And I didn't want to, feed my kid propaganda and, tell him, Russians are our enemies and stuff. And I think it's really important, I think, for, I guess, my son and kid, he's 14, and kids his age that are going to be adults in 4 years, 4 years doesn't seem that long to me. And I just feel like I need to get a good bearing on what's going on. And, when I saw your stuff, I was like, whoa, this is really, peace with Russia. That's just, we don't talk about this at all. And it provides me hope and a different, I guess, a vision. No one ever talks about this stuff.
Well, yeah, well,
sorry, I hope that was a mouthful, but
no, it's great. And that's the good thing is that, I'm going on Jamarl's show tomorrow, and and through Jamarl, I was able to connect with you. And I mean, we are the majority. The majority of people don't want World War III. Maybe they don't understand the issues. Maybe they've been, sold a bill of goods by mainstream media. But in terms of what we want, we are pretty universal in what we want, right? We want economic development. We want jobs and better economic opportunities. We want the life expectancy here in America to stop going down and start going up again. We want our freedoms, the right to say what we believe and, speak our minds, and we want economic opportunity, and we don't want a new world war. And that's pretty basic. I mean, there's nothing particularly radical about that. It's just that our leaders and their drive to make profits is taking us in the opposite direction. And there's really no way to stand up for those things without, starting to get at the ability of the billionaire monopolists to rule over us. I mean, their rule is in question when we start saying, look, we want things to move in a different direction. Their system is leading toward war and impoverishment and repression, and we don't want that. So that naturally leads us in another direction. And now there is this other economy in the world that came into the world as a result of anti-colonial revolutions. And that economy, things are rising and people are getting better because they have a government that steps in and, controls the corporations, right? And it's not the old Soviet way of doing things where everything is government run, but, the corporations aren't free to just do whatever they want. There's an overall plan to control the means of production and raise up living standards. And they don't have the problems that we're having. And, just having that conversation is what CPI is all about. And that, you can't have that conversation. And, for most of my adult life, I was involved in, you could call it the far left, but the far left has kind of lost its mind, and you're not allowed to talk about that anymore. You have to just talk about these very divisive cultural issues that, where people stop thinking. And it's like, I don't want to fight with people about cultural issues. I want to talk about protecting our freedom, raising up the economy and increasing people's living standards and stopping the danger of a new world war. And so that's why the Center for Political Innovation exists. And we're innovating because if you stay in the left-right trap, you won't be able to have the important conversations. So I'm glad you stumbled into our community. I hope you stick around.
I'd love to be useful if I can in some way.
Hey, I will send you the information about where we're going to be tomorrow. Please don't announce it on here because we don't want people to do that. But I'll put it in the private chat so you know where we're going to be tomorrow. If you want to come by, that'd be great. And I hope we'd love to plug you into our activities. And this is why we exist, because there's a lot of people out there just like you that have the exact same concerns, and it's kind of common sense. Have you lived in New York City your whole life?
Yeah, I have an interesting background. I'm half Korean. I'm half Ukrainian.
Okay.
Ukrainian Jew on one side, mother's Buddhist, Korean Buddhist. So I never fit in any box. I've lived in New York for most of my life. Raised in, Manhattan, lived in the Bronx a little bit and boogie down. I live in Brooklyn now, but I'm 50. I've lived New York for about 40 something years of my life. Remember a little bit of Korea, and it's
wow.
Yeah, I have a different skew. I've tried different political stuff too. I mean, there was one time where I was briefly, after 9/11, a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fair warning, and I've really come around on that. I was a Bernie bro. I contributed. I worked. Try to volunteer as much as possible with that, and then I just felt a little bit like, it just fell flat. And I'm a little bit. I guess I've lost a little hope. I guess on where do I, align myself to. But I've also worked in banking during the 2008 crisis, and I saw the underbelly of. I worked for a Swiss bank, and I was a software engineer on their banking systems, and I was one of the first responders during the 2008 crisis. And man, that was really freaking scary.
Wow.
To know, it's like watching, seeing like the engine come apart, like while you're on flight.
Very good. Well, hey, you've been a lot of different places, and New York City, I mean, I think it's in the musical Rent. They say New York City, center of the universe. Like there's everything here. There's a
lot. Are you also in New York?
I am. Yeah. I live in Brooklyn.
Okay. Whereabouts?
Well, I don't want to say.
Okay.
Here,
yeah. We could.
But I did send you in here where we're going to be tomorrow. If you want to join us tomorrow, like evening time. If you look in the private chat here on StreamYard, you can see the information. You also have a way to get in touch with me, and we can plug you into stuff. So
okay, I would love to.
Yeah, I'm also in Brooklyn. I always joke about my lovely Brooklyn apartment. So here I am. But I mean, it sounds like you've been in a lot of places, and you share our sentiments. You're a fan of Jamarl. You get what we're about. So I hope to meet you soon. And thanks for popping in. And hope next time I open up, you do the same thing. And I hope to meet you in person soon and shake your hand.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Caleb.
Yeah. So check out the private chat for the information about how to get in touch. Okay. Sound good?
Sounds
All
good.
Right.
Thanks, folks.
All right. Thank you.
Care.
That was great. that was great to meet Charles, right? Charles, again, is representative of so many people that are looking for what we're about. So there we go. Well, I'm going to continue this video. Then I've got a couple other things to show. And then, then we'll do the roll call. And then I'll answer any questions that people might have. And then we'll probably be done for tonight. We're approaching the 2-hour mark. So here we go. What we need right now is a movement. Podcasts don't cut it. It's great that people like to talk on the internet. It's great that people like to debate the facts. But what we need right now more than anything is a movement. People coming together to spread anti-imperialism, to figure out how to carry out operations like Peace MAGA or getting the Houthi book out there. We need a movement of people who rely on each other and can work together, can learn together, can be patient with each other, and can get things done. And if there's one thing I've learned over the last couple of years, it's that sometimes the people who agree with you can be completely useless. And sometimes people you might not agree with, but you have some common ground around, they can be the most helpful and important people in getting done what needs to be done. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that we don't need more internet niches, and we don't need more obscure politics. Nowadays everyone's very specific. You don't just like cars, you like red cars, that are made in this year, and the internet kind of atomizes people. And our plan is to set up shop here in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and around the country. We're planning to figure out how to have a building, an organizing center here in the Chicago area to make sure that we can start organizing in communities and building the anti-imperialist network that is definitely needed to get the United States into the new economy. And it's very exciting. So I guess, I'll be honest, I would like to recruit you to the Center for Political Innovation. I would. But if you say no, if you don't end up joining, I'll understand, because it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody to get involved in this kind of politics. It takes a level of devotion. I don't want to recruit you to listening to a podcast. I don't want to recruit you to a YouTube channel. I want to recruit you to a way of life of struggling alongside your brothers and sisters and standing in solidarity with countries that are under attack. I'm trying to recruit you to a lifestyle, and that lifestyle isn't for everybody, but those who can take it on find it to be very, very rewarding. And if it's right for you, you should join our organization. Dues are $15 a month, and if you become a member, we can connect you with other people around the country. It's very exciting what we're doing. So that's kind of my report about what I had to say here. Now, we are going to hand out some awards, but before we do that, a great dance team from Russia is going to perform. And I guess we're going to have a great dance performance. I think they're called Kalinka USA. And they're going to give us a dance performance. So I guess if they want to make their way up to the stage, we're going to have a dance performance, and then we'll continue with our awards ceremony. So we'll just looking for the dancers. Go ahead. Thank you. another guest who's joining us. This is John. How you doing, John?
Hi, Caleb. I was on once before, but last time I just put my name John, and so this time I put Impala Johnny, which is my handle in the chat, just in case anyone wants to put the face to the name. Not that I think anyone really cares about me, but
well, we care about you. Why did you pick Impala Johnny?
Well, when I was 17, I bought my first car, and it was a 1971 Impala, and that was in 1997. So all the kids back then had cars from the 80s, like Fox Body Mustangs and Thunderbirds and, little cars. So it was really weird to buy a gigantic car from the 70s. And so somebody came up with the nickname. They were saying, John, no, Impala Johnny. And I just went with it because we had friends who had horrible nicknames. Like, I don't know if I could even say them on YouTube, like Pedophile Matt, Fat Chris, Bacon. He was also fat, but so I was just really happy I did not get a bad nickname. And so I encouraged it. And then when the internet came around, I didn't get a computer till like 1999. So I went with it in creating accounts and stuff.
Oh, very good. Well, what's on your mind tonight on the eve of this big meeting in Alaska?
Well, the big meeting's on my mind. Also, I wanted to say how fantastic I thought Charles G. was. His story, I thought his story was fabulous. And I kind of did a bad job with my story last time. I said I kind of come from the conservative side, but in high school, I was a Republican. I was in New York City. I was born and raised in New York City. All the teachers were liberals. All the baby boomers were liberals, which was my parents' generation. And I saw being a conservative as really being like rebelling against that, like kind of rebelling by being a reactionary. And then when George Bush got elected, I thought the whole world was going to change, and it didn't. And then 9/11 happened, and then I bought that whole thing, totally bought into it. And as the years went on, there was always an excuse, why the conservatives can't deliver. And I got more and more discouraged until somewhere around 2007, there was a guy in New Hampshire named Ed Brown. And I think I heard about him in a little article on the Drudge Report. And he was actually in an armed standoff with the feds because he refused to pay his income tax. And a whole bunch of people were rallying around him and having like concerts and picnics and things like that. And they had a MySpace page set up for him, which was the big thing at the time, MySpace. Facebook wasn't around yet. And I kind of joined up with that group, and it was really an amazing collection of people. I didn't get personally involved because later on people went to jail. So luckily I didn't get really involved with it. But they had Randy Weaver from Ruby Ridge actually came out and visited those guys there. And I was part of the MySpace group, and those people were talking about InfoWars and Prison Planet. And so I went over there and I listened to Alex Jones, and Alex Jones was totally against Ed Brown and the people supporting him. He said, you guys are crazy. The feds are violent and dangerous, and you're bringing your family there and you're having a picnic like it's a joke and this and that. So I was really mad because I was used to that kind of politics where you just agree with everything somebody says, like Rush or Sean Hannity. You just agree, and you're on one side and the other guys are on the other side. But for some reason I kept going back to Alex Jones, and that was around the time of the Ron Paul running for president, and it really opened my eyes. And what young people now probably don't realize, because a lot of people felt like Alex Jones sold out when he started supporting Trump. But back then, Alex Jones had anyone who was against the government, he had them on. He had liberals, he had conservatives, he had Dennis Kucinich was on, Paul Craig Roberts was on, Cindy Sheehan was on after she fell out with the Democrats. So that's kind of my origin story.
Yeah, no, I remember those years very well. I first heard of Alex Jones when I was in Cleveland. It was kind of maybe Bush's second term, and there were anti-war protests, and all these young Arab American teenagers came with big stacks of DVDs of Alex Jones talking about 9/11 truth and things like that. And they were just giving away these DVDs, and they were young Arab Americans that were trying to, they were against the wars and et cetera. And yeah, I remember those years very well. And I would listen to Alex Jones during those years because he was against the establishment. And and he would have anybody on, and he was anti-war, and he talked about the Patriot Act and our freedoms being taken away. And yeah, I remember that very well. And, what you said about, how everyone in, New York City, your teachers and all of them were liberals. Like, see, I probably wouldn't have gone to the left first. At this point, I don't consider myself to be part of the left. I'm in, completely new territory, but I wouldn't have gone to the left first if I didn't grow up in a super conservative area. And, I got interested in these ideas, but I was kind of against the conservative prevailing establishment. And I remember, in my area, to not be a Republican was the next question was why do you hate America? And I remember there was a girl in my class one time, and she came to me very discreetly. It was a girl who I went to high school with. She actually died in a car accident a couple of years after we graduated. But I remember she said to me very discreetly, she said, Caleb, I think my mom is turning into a communist like you. She's watched a couple Michael Moore movies. And I just thought that was pretty funny. But it was like you were either a Republican or you were bad. And I was the outspoken voice of bad. And I was calling myself a communist. So her mom watched a Michael Moore movie. So her mom must be a communist. It was like that was kind of how things were. And then when I came to New York City, I see that there is this fake, this very unprincipled, phony liberalism. Right. That we now call woke. I mean, woke is just the most completely plastic, it's just completely, it's, Boeing and General Electric with rainbow flags and Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's just so fake and pro-establishment. And, and I feel like if I were growing up now, I would probably be on the far right because anyone who questions anything is labeled far right, And that also, if you go around the world, Russia, I went to Iran, and I remember I talked to the Iranians, and they said, well, we're not far left or far right. We call it not capitalism, but Islam. They're very socially conservative, very Islamic, but they're also very much against capitalism, very much planned economy. There's big pictures of Malcolm X. They consider their revolution to be kind of like Che Guevara, kind of like the wave of anti-colonial revolution. Russia's a similar story. They have a special visa now they call the traditional values visa. Where if you want to go to Russia to have a traditional family, they'll give you a visa to set up and move there. And they very much, they don't have gay marriage. They have an anti-homosexual propaganda law that you can't propagate, LGBT stuff to younger people. But their economic system, the government controls the major oil and gas companies, and it uses the revenue from their oil and gas to subsidize the economy, to help people start their own farms. And, it's very much a centrally planned economy, right? I mean, there's a lot of free enterprise, but it's centered around government-controlled oil and gas, government banks. It's like China, where they have an overall planned economy and a very powerful government that then facilitates a market. So Russia is not left or right. And what's funny is when I went to Venezuela, it was the same thing in Venezuela. And I remember Venezuela presents itself as like a Marxist communist government. That's the way it's presented. But when I went to Venezuela, I remember Chavez had just lost. I guess Maduro and his people, they lost control of the parliament in 2015 when I was there. They lost the elections. And so I was in Bolivar Square in downtown Caracas, where all the supporters were really, really upset. And I walked in, and I was with another delegation of Americans. And this woman ran up and she started shouting. And this was clearly a really big, Maduro, Chavez supporter. She shouts, your country, are you an American? Your country is run by the Zionists. Your country is run by the Zionists. And she's not wrong. I mean, America is run by the Zionists. And she said, you're going to do what they did to Libya. Hillary Clinton's going to come here and make all our men into a bunch of fags. And I'm just like, wow, that doesn't sound like far left to me. I talked to some of the people in Venezuela, and they said, well, the whole thing about the Zionists, Hugo Chavez talked about that all the time. And he had broadcasts about the Israel lobby and the neocons and how they run things. Gay marriage is not legal in Venezuela. Abortion is not legal in Venezuela. And while Venezuela's allies tend to be the far left because of the 80s and because of Latin America, they're doing a very different thing. And Chavez came out of the military, right? He wore his military uniform. He was a paratrooper. And so it's complicated and we don't understand it. And the left and the right in America are just two faces of liberalism. The right emphasizes economic liberalism, the free market. You're on your own, poor people are on their own, let the corporations just do whatever they want. And the left in America emphasizes social liberalism, which is you have no loyalty to your family, no loyalty to the country, just be your own person. There's not even any gender, just, everyone's just an atomized individual. And that's both the same ideology, which is liberalism. Whereas the people around the world that are rejecting the rule of Wall Street, they're embracing collectivism of some kind, right? And like in China, I was just in China, and in China, I noticed, and I've talked about this a lot, that Mao tried to completely wipe out Confucius. Confucius was all about tradition and all of that, and Mao was telling the young people to rebel. But now in China, there's a revival of Mao and Confucius, and their statues will be right next to each other, because they're both part of China's unique identity that is not Western.
And a lot of things don't need to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. And that, on the one hand, Mao was telling the young people to rebel, but it was because he was, a socialist and he wanted to create like a egalitarian collective society to build up a new China. And Confucius was telling people to be obedient and was emphasizing relationships and all of that. But it was because they had a collective vision. They're both collective in their own way. One's traditionally conservative, one is socialistic, but they're both collective. And this is part of China's unique identity that is not Western, right? And that's what I understood, and that politics is a lot bigger than the way we understand it in America. That's kind of a long-winded way of explaining it. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I agree completely. Everything is more complicated than it seems, and there are no teams. At this point, I'm on the side of anyone who wants to bring down whatever you want to call it, the system, the post-World War II order, the globalists, there's all kinds of different names for it. And then, different people have different visions for the future, and some are better than others. But I think we need to all unite on the fact that we're not happy with what we have now. And then we can figure out the future as we go along, instead of like fighting with each other over, I'm a this and I'm a that. And
yeah, well, the period we're in now, where the establishment presents itself in this kind of vaguely liberal way while they're waging wars and all of that, in a way, it's similar to the early 60s when, the John Birch Society, the conservative organization, was like public enemy number one. They were made fun of on TV. They were kicked out of the Republican Party. And it was like there were a lot of people that were John Birch Society kind of people that, they were against communism, but when they talked about communism, they talked about the Rockefellers and their funding of Planned Parenthood. And they talked about, big corporations in America. They talked about the CIA funding, artwork, and, messing with art and culture. And that the John Birch Society, they were certainly not communist by any means. They were definitely anti-communist, vehement anti-communists. But in their conservatism, they were at odds with what the establishment wanted. And because of that, they became widely demonized. And the liberal order was saying, they were embracing Dr. Martin Luther King and passing the Civil Rights Act, but they still did the Vietnam War. And the Black community was pretty upset. And pretty soon that liberalism that the establishment had fomented turned into the campus anti-war Vietnam War movement, the Black Panthers and stuff. And so then they brought in Nixon to go after the left that kind of got out of their control. And it's a struggle of the globalists and the big monopolies to maintain control. And the dissent sometimes spills out from the right and sometimes it spills out from the left. But that's, at the end of the day, it's about these big monopolies and their struggle to control. That's really what it's about. And the main thing that they want is they want to stop economic growth. And that's what I give credit to Lyndon LaRouche for. As much as, Lyndon LaRouche did a lot of things in his life, I'm not here to defend everything he did. But one thing that Lyndon LaRouche pointed out is that the issue is, are you for economic growth? Are you against it? Because the globalists, the big monopolies, they want to stop economic growth so they can stay at the top. Whereas the countries around the world that have broken out of their system, they're growing and growing and growing. They are mobilizing to build and raise people up. And that's the divide. What do you think?
Yeah, Russia and China are both doing fantastic. And we're going to have to change our system, the way we're going to have a world where we have we stay equal with them is not by starting wars and doing all this. I think the worst thing that ever happened was when the CIA was founded, and they did Operation Underworld, and they had the mafia go in and sabotage Italy ahead of the invasion, and everything kind of fell apart. And even to this day, people are like, oh, the Italians, they can't fight. Well, the Italians can fight. Just go to a pizza place and start an argument. So, and look at some of the guns. Beretta is a big firearms company, but they couldn't fight because it was rigged up. And everyone thinks of World War II like the game changer was the nuclear bomb, which obviously that was a big thing, but it's an in-your-face thing. What's not so in your face is the CIA linked up with criminal organizations to manipulate and take down governments around the world. And so I don't think you're going to preserve U.S. hegemony anymore by just going around the world, paying people off, starting little revolutions, funding organized crime and different factions, and having these wars that cost a fortune. And we really need to kind of look at China and Russia and what those guys are doing, and the same way start taking care of our citizens and stop wasting money on this stuff that most of it is very evil.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, thanks for coming on, John. All my best wishes to you.
Well, thanks for having me on. And quick shout out to Checkpoint Charlie. I know him since high school, and he's the guy who got me involved in the channel. And he outed himself in the chat today. So if you're mad that I'm here, you blame him.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right. Thank you, John. Thank you. Unanimous. How you doing?
Hey, man. I just wanted to say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing tomorrow. I really do. I'm regret to inform you, as much as I really did want to. I recently had a car accident. But I'm just wanting to let anyone know that I appreciate what you're doing now, and more than ever, because I've been trying to get into the job, trying to get myself set up. I'm in a weird, I don't know how much or how little anyone in chat will agree with this, but being between 18 and 22 is a weird point in your life. Like, it's like you're an adult, but you can't really do that many, but it's like you're trying to get yourself set up. You're trying to set yourself up with adulthood. I appreciate your content because I think you're not nihilistic. And that's something I wanted to bring up. Is it just me, or did media get very nihilistic or very dark, like the content that was in the mainstream get extra edgy? Like, I noticed that the media content got extra edgy around the time of 9/11 and around the time of the Vietnam War. Did you not notice that?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the late 60s, there is a lot of very optimistic content, right? There was that song that was RFK's favorite song that came from Man of La Mancha, Dream the Impossible Dream, and that I associate the Vietnam era at least with a lot of kind of optimistic stuff at least, right? The Kennedy administration and stuff. But I have noticed that, especially in the last few years, there has been a very, very pessimistic undertone. I would also say that the late 70s, like the mid to late 70s, a huge amount of very pessimistic content.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about stuff that starts, I'm going to say it starts around, I'm going to say it peaked with the movie Taxi Driver. And I'd say the film that kind of closed it out, kind of felt like a weird bow on the era was 1980. Was this 81 or 82? It was the movie Scarface.
Oh, I haven't seen
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think you would, because you understand some of the references I'm making, because you don't seem like someone who enjoys a lot of violent media, and that's probably why you're a very optimistic person. I once told a a joke to a friend that I think how you like Superman is because you relate to the story of a guy from a small town going to the big city to, I don't know, save the world, make his mark. I admire that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I like to think of
but yeah,
myself as a mild-mannered reporter. So there you go.
yeah, but I was just gonna say that I noticed that when people were talking about the golden era of television, what they were really talking about is like how a lot of television shows, The Sopranos, The Wire, Dexter, Breaking Bad, they were kind of much darker. And I noticed that a lot of these did come out between 2001 and 2013. And that was like when a lot of stuff was going on with the war on terror. And I guess this was also when gangster rap was still very popular. I think a lot of what that was, it's yes, people have their theories about that being tied to prisons, but in my view, it's more so about trying to get the public in a more wartime mood, like trying to desensitize the public to violent behavior. Because I noticed a lot of that happening in the late 70s as Nixon was getting out, as detente was kind of shaking up.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of Charlton Heston like sci-fi movies, right? Like if you watch the Omega, what is it? It's called, I think, the Omega Man or the Last Man on Earth, or which one is it? I think it's the Omega, right? The Omega Man, or have you seen that one? Right, where it's like the whole planet are vampires. I Am Legend it's the novel I Am Legend, but they've made different movie versions of it. The Charlton Heston one is the most explicitly political, and it's basically a conservative film, kind of a conservative rant against the new left. And that and then he made another movie called Soylent Green. Have you ever heard of this movie?
Not really, but
yeah,
I just noticed that the proliferation of the mafia movie in this time, and I thought that was an interesting thing that came out around kind of the late Vietnam War period to the early 80s.
Yeah,
and that's when there was all this fear about
that was that Carter was using allegations of organized crime to break up the Roosevelt Democrats, right? He went after with Abscam. He went after the Democrats, and the allegation was, oh, they're mafia, they're tied to organized crime, as if like everything in urban political machines isn't. But he went after in New Jersey. There were a number of Italian politicians who believed in economic growth and were like Rooseveltists, believed in nuclear power that Jimmy Carter went after with Abscam.
And I guess that's how Giuliani started to come to power in New York. Like he was this big prosecutor against the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy talked a bit about how the U.S. kind of allowed it to foment in Italy around the Gladio years, I guess.
Yeah.
Like creating more violent Italy. But
Indeed.
I was just pointing to how between the 70s and the 80s, we went from Superfly, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, to The Cosby Show, to Married with Children, to this more loose, I guess, daffy media.
Mm-hmm.
And how in the 2000s we had The Wire, we had Breaking Bad, and then we went to Riverdale and whatnot.
Well, I haven't seen all of those, but I kind of get what you're saying. But it's great to have you on. You have a lot of insight.
I just wanted to ask one last question.
Sure.
Why was it that Nelson Mandela got so much praise, but Robert Mugabe was always like heavily vilified, and like South Africa was seen as more friendly than Zimbabwe? Because
Nelson Mandela never changed property relations. And actually, you can find old interviews from like the late 80s where they use Mugabe as the good guy against Nelson Mandela, right?
And while we're on the subject,
the Lancaster House Agreement, which ended the Rhodesian Bush War, said that they couldn't nationalize anything for like 20 years, 10 years, something like that. That was the peace treaty, right? So Rhodesia fell, Zimbabwe came into existence, but Ian Smith kept his property. They wouldn't touch anything until like the late 90s. And so because of that, Robert Mugabe was the good guy until he started redistributing property. Then he was the bad guy. Nelson Mandela, the government of South Africa has largely not touched anything. And so because of that, Nelson Mandela was the good guy. I think that's really what it was. But, at first Mugabe was the good guy and Nelson Mandela was the bad guy, but then they flipped. The other thing was that I think especially in the early 90s, like late 80s, the U.S. ruling class started supporting Nelson Mandela because the Soviet Union was going to fall, and so they weren't going to have a full communist revolution in Zimbabwe or in South Africa like they planned to. Number one, and number two, apartheid was so bad, and Nelson Mandela was so popular that they figured that it was just a bad look for the United States to be supporting, to be not supporting him. And like when he died, everyone just kind of glossed over the fact that had been called a terrorist by the U.S. government, that he was a communist. They just kind of glossed over it. Obama spoke at his funeral and all of that. I will say, though, this is kind of interesting, is, Chairman O'Malley of the Uhuru movement absolutely hates Nelson Mandela and protested him from the beginning because his critique was, he said, look, the issue in South Africa is a property question, right? And Nelson Mandela doesn't want to confiscate white property. That was a big thing. He just wants some kind of gradual move towards socialism. And on top of that, the Workers' World Party that I was in, they supported Nelson Mandela in like this crazy dogmatic way. Like even when I was in the group, like 2010, 2012, they would not criticize the ANC. It was like a rule. They would not criticize the ANC. Yeah. And in the 80s, they had like some big events that were supporting the ANC, and black nationalists showed up with firearms at their events and like waved guns around at them.
Yeah, because wasn't there also a faction that was like in both Zimbabwe and South Africa? There was like a pro-Soviet faction and there was a pro-Chinese faction. Yes. Wasn't there also a pro-Chinese faction in South Africa?
Yes.
Like what happened to those guys?
Pan-African Congress, the PAC, right? And the PAC, they said that they wanted to deport all whites from South Africa. It was just, a purely black country. And their slogan was one settler, one bullet, was their slogan. One settler, one bullet, right? They were PAC. And a lot of black nationalists supported PAC and felt that Nelson Mandela was an agent of white people and was an agent of the Soviet Union, right? China had the position, the position that the Soviet Union was an empire just like the United States at that time. They obviously, that was not correct. They don't take that position anymore, but they took that position in the 70s and 80s. And so they alleged that Nelson Mandela was an agent of the Soviet Empire or whatever, and that the PAC, which was the black only, forcibly deport all whites movement, they were the legitimate anti-colonial fight. And a lot of black nationalists supported the PAC and hated Nelson Mandela because he wanted to, allow whites to remain, in South Africa. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that the pro-Soviet faction did end up, well, I guess it was kind of allowed to come into power in South Africa because the U.S. was able to get in there and kind of steal the thunder. Well, and also, while we're on the subject, let's burst the bubble here.
Yeah.
Talk about how South Africa loved Israel. Let's burst the bubble, man.
Really?
Let's burst the bubble.
I don't know about that because nowadays South Africa is very critical of Israel. And
no, apartheid South Africa. I'm saying let's burst the bubble, man. Let's burst the bubble. Okay. Let's burst the bubble that all these freaking Rhodesian simps hate Israel, but they love apartheid South Africa. They think Mugabe is Satan himself. Burst the bubble, man.
Well, when I first worked at an insurance company, in New York City, I worked at a Zionist insurance firm, and the overthrow of apartheid in South Africa was something the Zionists would always point to when defending Israel. Oh, you think Israel going away is bad? Well, look at South Africa. All these, they got rid of the white state, and look at South Africa. It's a shithole now. I mean, they talked exactly the same way. That was the Zionist talking point, is they pointed to the fall of apartheid in South Africa as a bad thing. And they defended apartheid in South Africa frequently. I heard that from right-wing Zionists, that the fall of South Africa was was a bad thing, that, white South Africa was better. That was a constant Zionist talking point. And I was shocked.
Same with Rhodesia.
Yeah. I was shocked to hear that. And also, the white nationalist crowd, they tend to, talk about white genocide in South Africa and all that shit, but then they claim they're anti-Israel. And it's like, yeah, Israel and Rhodesia and apartheid South Africa.
In fact, I'm pretty sure this is decently widely documented, and it is that the Israeli nuclear weapons program was very heavily tied into the nuclear weapons program in South Africa.
Not surprising at all.
And a lot of arms sales to South Africa came from which country?
Israel.
Yeah,
and
their doctrines were very similar, because they both relied upon supporting, just destabilizing their neighbors so much. Samora Machel, the president of Mozambique, it's widely believed that his plane was shot down by the Air Force of apartheid South Africa. And you talked about Sudan, but it's also documented that the Israelis supported these militias in Lebanon that would just brutally kill Muslims and Palestinians.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I did not really understand Zionism until I came to New York City. When I was in college, there was an Arab American student who was in the LGBT organization, and he showed a pro-Palestine film. And the Hillel group at my college was just so angry. How dare he? So they demanded to watch it ahead of time. So they watched it, and they were really, really angry because at the beginning of the film, it had some parallels between Israel and South Africa. And they were just like, oh, it's not like that. We're not apartheid. That's so offensive. And Jews were against apartheid. And, they were so, upset about it. Then, when I came to New York City, I met Zionists that would defend apartheid routinely. They would say apartheid in South Africa was a good thing, and look at what happened when it fell, and that's why Israel. Another thing that I would see when I was in New York City, I used to sell communist newspapers, or on the train all the time, right? And this was a conversation I had many, many times. I'd walk up and down the train cars on the A train or the N train, or be like, communist, socialist newspaper, get the latest issue. Many times, young teenage Zionist says to me, I don't want to buy that because I come from a socialist country, and it's called Israel, and we waste all our money giving free healthcare to people. We really need to build up our military and kill the Palestinians. And Israel's falling apart because of socialism. I met so many and they're like what, like nerds. It's just something about them, right? Is they have this complex, boys and girls. The high squeaky voice. I'm from Israel. I know how bad socialism is because I'm from Israel. It was so, and you talk to them and it's just like, Israel's not a socialist country, number one. And it's like, you think Israel's not spending enough money on its military? What the fuck planet do you live on? Right. And they live in this alternate reality. Israel's falling apart. The Arabs are going to take over because of socialism. And I'm just like, what are you smoking crack? I just many times I had that conversation with young Zionist teenagers that were experts on the evils of socialism.
Well, I went to, it's interesting because I went to high school in a college town, Davis, California. And it's interesting because my town, it was split. You had a lot of people from Palestine, but you also had Jewish people and American Jews. A lot of them do support Israel, but since it was a college town, some of them were liberal Zionists. They talk one time in civics class, my teacher said, Hamas is not all Palestinians. In fact, she literally said in class that that Hamas may have bombed their own hospital. Don't blame Israel yet. It may have been Hamas. Israel thinks it was Hamas.
Oh.
But there was still a few pockets of Muslim student groups, and there were also Jewish student groups. But for some reason, whenever Palestine came up, teachers would change the subject. One time I got sent to the principal's office for declaring in front of some Zionist student that Israel was like Nazi Germany, because apparently that they thought it was anti-Semitic. You ever get where you, it's kind of weird how that's considered anti-Semitic. Like you can't
Yeah.
compare Israel to Nazi Germany. You can't compare it to apartheid South Africa because it's like anti-Semitic or something.
Because it hurts their feelings. I will say this though, more than, the right-wing Zionists I would deal with in the streets of New York. And I mean, that's just a part of New York City life. And they're like amazingly stupid. What annoyed me was I was in a communist group, the Workers' World Party, that was pro-Palestine and had been pro-Palestine, had a long record of being pro-Palestine, but it was majority Jewish, members. Your typical Workers' World Party member was a Jewish homosexual, basically, because they'd been pro-LGBT and they were New York City based. And it was, it was somebody who was LGBT, and usually they had had an uncle or a cousin who was in CPUSA or something. So they didn't, and there was a feeling among New York City Jews that McCarthyism was anti-Semitic. Right. So like it was not, they didn't grow up pro-communist necessarily, but they grew up like being anti-communism. Like they'd been kind of trained that if somebody is talking too much against communism, that means they hate the Jews. Right. And so based on that, like you had a lot of like boomer Jews who were LGBT, who were in the Workers' World Party. That was like half the group right in New York City. And what surprised me was that they were anti-Israel, but there was this odd sensitivity. Do you know what I'm saying? And
like a lot of the pro-Palestine Muslims at school, they didn't like Assad. They kind of were hesitant to talk about Iran. I think some of them came from Jordan.
Yeah, sometimes they would try to tell me the Israelis were the victims. They didn't want to go there. They just got sent there after the Holocaust, and that they're the victims. And we should just protest the United States, and Israel's just a puppet of the United States. And if you say Israel is the bad one, that's anti-Semitic. I heard that one a few times. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And the other one was that, every so often one of them would just have a tantrum about, like I was at a pro-Palestine rally in Cleveland, I remember. And there was a Muslim group handing out a leaflet that said, facts you didn't know about Israel. And one of them is that in the Orthodox neighborhoods in Israel, women have to ride in the back of the bus, which is true, right? Orthodox Jews are very conservative. Men and women can't be next to each other on the bus. And it just said, on the leaflet, and in Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods, there's laws that women have to sit in the back of the bus, men get to sit in the front. And I just read this leaflet out loud, and this Jewish communist lesbian started yelling, "Oh my God, that's not true. That's anti-Semitic." Well, maybe it is true, but we don't stone women like they do. And the most like vile anti-Arab racism came out of her mouth. And this woman was a communist, and this woman had waved Palestine flags, but it was like something touches a nerve, right? That Jewish supremacism is so deeply ingrained, right, in these people. They can be pro-Palestine, they can wave the Palestine flag, but there's still this like, it's Jews versus everybody else that is just so deeply ingrained in the culture, right? And if we don't confront that right on, that it's, and that is something that a lot of leftists just don't want to touch, right? That exists. There is this like, and the big disagreement that I had with them, which I've talked about on these streams many times, is if a black person came into the Workers' World Party office and said they didn't agree with gay marriage or said, I don't agree with queers or LGBT, it was like this condescending, like, of course you'd think that. You're a black person.
It's a weird mindset.
Let me finish. But if a white person came in and said, I don't believe in gay marriage, get out of here. You're in the Klan. You're a racist or whatever, right? And it was, on the one hand, this like weird, like, white savior complex, like blacks are just kind of victims, and who cares if they have backward views, they're just inferior, right? I mean, that was kind of the belief. And then with white people, any white person that wasn't like 100% woke was scum of the earth. And then Zionists, and I had this argument with people many times. You'd see a group of Zionists saying, kill all the Arabs, all Muslims are terrorists. And they'd say, oh, that's so sad. That's so sad. There was no hatred for them. It was just so sad. It's so sad. Well, they really believe that. They really believe that. It's just so sad, right? And I remember Sarah Schulman, who was like a very popular, like, and she's anti-Zionist. She's like a lesbian, a Jewish writer in New York City who's anti-Israel. She talked about how when she first moved to New York City, there was no anti-Arab sentiment among the Jews that she knew. That came because of Israel, right? It wasn't until like the 60s and 70s that Jews, were being taught to hate Arabs. That when she moved to New York City in the 50s, when she was a child, it was hatred for white European Christians, right? It was that white European Christians had carried out the Holocaust, that white European Christians were no good, that was the bigotry that they had. And that the support for black people was that they viewed black people as victims of white European Christians. So they wanted to align with them. And that there was this like ethnic fight, basically, where it's like the white European Christians are bad people. And that is, it's really awful. And when you talk about wokeism and the anti-populism, the idea that populism is bad and all of that, it has a lot to do with the ethnic Jewish experience, right? That's what Lenin called the spirit of the ghetto. Right, this notion.
That's fun. That is fun.
Who was Jewish himself, and he said, "Look, the spirit of the ghetto. We've got to have no room for that." And the most blatant expression of the spirit of the ghetto is Zionism. But he called out the Jewish Bund of Russia. He said, "Look, the Jewish Bund that says they have to have a separate communist party just for the Jews. No, and that's the spirit of the ghetto." And Marx wrote a pretty fiery essay when he was a young man, also, basically. And that, if you read between the lines, that's what he's saying, that there is this culture that says it's us versus everybody else. We'll never fit in with the nation.
And a lot of it does come from pogroms and whatnot.
Yeah, they come by it honestly. Let's not pretend there haven't been horrendous crimes against humanity, against this culture, but there is a supremacism, and you have to call that out. And the left doesn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So I'm sorry, I just had to make that rant because it's something I've lived and been very frustrated.
Totally. And it's like I think. Like there is an interesting shift that you will see between the support of American Jews for the Soviet Union, and that shifts into them becoming pro-Israel, because a lot of the Jews in the US, they had sympathies with the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union was warning everyone about Hitler. And then all of a sudden you hear that like the Soviets were anti-Semitic. I don't know. Like there's something about a doctor's plot.
Well, yeah, that whole thing is very, very odd. You look into that, right? And it's like most of the doctors were not Jewish, but somehow, right, there was a group of doctors that were arrested for like plotting against Stalin, right? And some of them were Jews, but not all of them. And the memo got sent out in American media. Stalin hates the Jews, right? And it's very, very weird. It's very, very weird. It's also in my book on Khrushchevism, I point out.
And a lot of Israeli spies were arrested in the Eastern Bloc around.
Yeah. Do you know who leaked the secret speech? Israel, right? It was Israeli spies in Poland that leaked the secret speech. And I talk about that. And that's actually interesting. This book isn't about Israel, but Israel and Zionism just kind of keeps coming up throughout all of this. And that Mossad and the CIA had a secret agreement to share any information they had on the Soviets with each other. And so the Mossad got a copy of the secret speech in Poland, and they leaked it to President Truman.
Yeah, like a lot of, I think someone pointed it out that a lot of the Jews people claim were prisoners in the Soviet Union. Some of them were Israeli spies. I think actually to this day, it's kind of funny that people will call the Soviet Union and Russia anti-Semitic, because I think Russia and Germany have very strict laws that make it a crime to deny the Holocaust, I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Yeah. And
like even today, Russia, it's a serious crime to deny the Holocaust.
Anyone who runs that, both narratives are false, right? If you want to say the Soviet Union hated Jews, that's not true. The Soviet Union liberated millions of Jews from concentration camps. The Soviet Union outlawed anti-Semitism. It was officially illegal. And, were there problems in the Soviet Union related to that? Sure. However, after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a huge explosion of anti-Semitism because it was legal finally, right? Because the Soviet Union had suppressed it.
In fact, Solzhenitsyn, I think.
Yeah. But the other thing to point out is that, circumcision was illegal in the Soviet Union because it was child abuse, right? It was illegal. And they said, look, you can't cut up your child like that. That's completely illegal. Right. And that there was many other things that, Zionism, the Soviet Union declared Zionism At first, they supported Israel very briefly, but in 1967, they diplomatically recognized the Palestine Liberation Organization, right? So it's complicated. The answer is it's complicated, right? It's complicated. That's the answer. The Soviet dissidents, many of the anti-communists that were very vocal at the time of the fall of the USSR were Zionists, and that has to be pointed out.
But Solzhenitsyn, I think he was very high profile. He was viciously anti-Semitic.
Yeah, he was
though I will say it's kind of surprising Putin showed up at his funeral.
Well, Solzhenitsyn, and that's again, just like people don't understand the Soviet Union and its relation to this, they don't understand modern Russia, because in modern Russia, Stalin is wildly popular, and so is Solzhenitsyn. And there's a big monument to Solzhenitsyn. There's a Solzhenitsyn museum, and there's a huge revival of interest in Stalin, and Stalin is also wildly popular. And again, we don't understand the politics, and that I one thing I see over and over again, and I'm guilty of this myself, right? Is that we Americans, we try to project our politics onto the world, right? And you get these ortho bros who think that they can just repeat Republican, standard, communism failed everywhere and killed millions of people, and the Soviet Union was a giant murder factory. And that makes them in line with the Russian Orthodox Church because they condemn communism. And it's like, it's not that simple, right? The Russian Orthodox Church takes great pride in the defeat of the Nazis, and Stalin built more churches than any other leader in Russia's history. And, so
yeah, like they'll point to they'll point to like brutalism as this anti-Christian thing. But from what you showed on your channel of the Moscow metro, that looks very classical. It looks like a very classical setup. But you have to keep in mind that the brutalist housing buildings, these weren't supposed to look cool. They were supposed to be warm.
Right. Well, and that Soviet, it's complicated. The answer is it's complicated. And it's like, Americans want China to be capitalist. America wants China to be, China is a great example of capitalism. There's just so much of this projection where we are trying to make a point related to arguments in America. So we go to some other country and we say, this country is like this. And it's like, it's not that simple. And that's, with the Soviet Union, is the Soviet Union anti-Semitic, or is it a Jewish Bolshevik conspiracy? Neither, right? It's neither of those things, right? The Soviet Union in some ways was quite critical and repressive of the Jewish religion, not allowing circumcision, and they certainly weren't pro-Israel. On the other hand, the Soviet Union was outlawed anti-Semitism, and it's more complicated than we understand.
Yeah. Good books on the Soviet Union and religion, because there's a lot of it. You got any on that shelf of yours?
There's a book called Soviet but Not Russian that I have, which is about the national minorities in the USSR. I don't know. I think I might have it on my shelf. I recommend that book. And it was published in the 80s, and it was about the non-Russian nationalities in the USSR. And I would recommend people read that. There's this notion that the Soviet Union outlawed Islam or something. That's not the case. And in fact, Stalin created this medal called Mother of the Soviet Union, which if you have more than 10 children, you get a medal. It's like one of the highest medals. And they got rid of it after World War II everywhere except the Islamic regions. They kept it in the Islamic regions, right? For cultural
And it's interesting because there's a photo that went viral, and it was of Stalin in traditional Central Asian clothing. I don't know if it was Uzbek, but it was Stalin. He was wearing a traditional Central Asian garments.
Right. And the other thing is that, Putin is a Christian, and that, a lot of, the Russian government are Christian, but Putin is more popular in the Muslim regions than in the Christian areas. He's very popular in the Christian areas, but he's wildly popular in the Islamic regions. So if this is some kind of like ethnic nationalist thing in Russia, that doesn't add up at all. Putin's more popular with the other nationalities that tend to be Muslim than he is with Russians. It tends to be you get
Belarus,
kids, who look at social media and buy the American line. You don't get that. You don't get that in the Islamic areas. So
in
ahead.
Belarus, people will try and say Lukashenko's this like hyper religious, hyper conservative guy. Yeah, he's conservative, but the man allowed the tattoo reunion to be in Minsk. I think he's openly identified as an atheist a few times.
And he recently they asked him about Dugin's fourth political theory, and he said, well, I don't think there's anything Dugin has done that is better than Marxism, Leninism. You know, I mean, Lukashenko will full on identify as a communist. He's done that many times, right? And he, you know, he admires Stalin and all that. Lukashenko, I guess in Belarus, there is a communist party and he's not a member of it, and he's not a member of any party, but they never dismantled the Soviet economic system in Belarus, right? Now, you know, so, but he's quite culturally conservative, but yeah, like you said, I believe he's an atheist. He talks about Marxism, Leninism being great and all that. It's just more complicated than we can realize. But anyway, it is getting late. So thank you for everything. You always bring great insights. And I do want to show a couple more clips on here before I go. And we're going to hit the 3-hour mark pretty soon. And I got to wake up early tomorrow and do Jamarl. So thank you, Unanimous. You're great. You're a smart guy. And I hope things work out with your car accident and everything. You'll get things figured out. I'm on your side. So hang in there.
I hope so too. And I'm on your side. Yeah. Anyone who needs, I'm willing to chip in if anyone, you know, I'm on X. So.
All right. Be in touch. Yep. Thanks. Yep. That's Unanimous. He's always great. I wanted to show 2 more clips. One is that the Russian finance minister is in Alaska now, and he made some comments about what's going to happen. So here's him.
Прилетели. Отлично. Какие у вас ожидания от переговоров? Ожидания от переговоров. Всегда надеемся на позитив. А какие конкретные темы по экономической повестке планируете обсудить? Главное, на политических таких вопросах. Экономику мы обсудим обязательно.
So, yeah, that was the Russian finance minister just giving a comment as he got off the plane. And I also, Scott Ritter made some pretty bold comments about the negotiations. So I'm going to show that.
Ukraine. So what you're basically saying is that it's up to Donald Trump to come up with some way to save Ukraine. Yes. It's not about Russia. This is about saving Ukraine. If they can't come up with, I mean, Vladimir Putin seemed to say, I heard him say there a little while ago, do this and we'll stop.
I think
we'll have a ceasefire the next day.
Vladimir Putin, again, he's the Russian president. I can't speak for him, but my guess is that he is going to give Donald Trump the ground truth. And he's going to say, look, Mr. President, this is the reality here. I don't know what your people are telling you. The thing about 20,000 dead is just bonkers.
Right, yeah.
The reality is we're winning. We're winning decisively.
Yeah.
Every day our advantages accrue greater. I'm willing just to keep this war going as long as necessary if our conditions are met. I would like this war to end. I know you want this war to end. Okay, but you have to respect Russian reality. This is Mother Russia. We're not stopping until we get this. And if they don't allow that and we have to keep fighting, then we will. If you want to stop the war, get Zelensky to agree to these territories being Russian. They will never join NATO. And then notice what he said. Once the ceasefire happens, then there's other conditions. The war doesn't end. He said then there has to be denazification, demilitarization, and changes in government, etc. But that's not a condition for a ceasefire. For a ceasefire, as you rightly pointed out, there's 2 conditions. Mother Russia is Mother Russia, and you can't be part of NATO.
That's it. We'll work from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Scott's right. They wouldn't be doing this if Russia wasn't winning. Let's just be real. They wouldn't even consider these negotiations if Russia was not winning this war. And the reality on the ground is that Russia is kicking ass. Russia is winning, and they'd like to make a deal so that Ukraine doesn't get completely demolished. That's the reality of the situation. So, we have one last call for questions, right? I saw somebody sent in a Cash App donation. I appreciate it, but they didn't send a question. So if the person who sent that in wants to send their question, there is one question on the Rumble, one Rumble rant. We have one last call. I'm going to put on a song, and we'll have one last call for questions. Leo Messi has his question. And so one last call for questions. You can send a Rumble rant on the Rumble. You can Cash App me at Caleb Maupin 22, or you can buy me a coffee at Caleb Maupin on Buy Me a Coffee. I'm going to put on a song, a unificationist song, called March of the New Age. I'm going to put that on. And then after that, I will answer any questions, and then we're done. So last call for any music, any songs. Here we go. Very good. So there don't seem to be any further questions. So Leo Messi said, didn't Putin criticize BLM when he met with Biden? You know, there was criticism of BLM because they used BLM-like slogans to promote anti-Russian protests. You know, but I'm just pulling up there's a Wikipedia page called Russia and Black Lives Matter that claims the opposite. It claims Russia was covertly promoting Black Lives Matter. You know, and repeats all these claims about the Internet Research Agency, which were, you know, shown in court to have not been the case and stuff. So you really, I mean, did Putin make a comment about Black Lives Matter when he met with Biden? I don't remember that happening. It doesn't surprise me. I guess I see here Putin cites disorder of Black Lives Matter and the U.S. Capitol riot. So he invoked January 6th and Black Lives Matter to say there's unrest in the United States. That's what it looks like to me, right? He said he did not want to see something like Black Lives Matter happen in Russia. And he also criticized many of the arrests on January 6th. So it sounds to me like what he was saying was he didn't want there to be a huge amount of instability. But they've tried to blame Black Lives Matter on Russia many times, just like they tried to blame Trump on Russia, and it wasn't true. And it's sad to see Wikipedia still running with the Internet Research Agency story. That's been debunked. The idea that the Internet Research Agency was working for the Russian government, they won money in court showing that that was not true. You know, and that the whole Russiagate thing, now we have the smoking gun from Tulsi Gabbard. It wasn't real. It was fake news. And yet they're still trying to sell it to us. You know, the internet is rigged. The internet is rigged. We've got to build a real life movement because the internet is rigged. Sorry, we didn't have time for a roll call tonight, but you know, that's how these things go. We're just now hitting the 3-hour mark. I'm going to end it because I got to get up early tomorrow for Jamarl Thomas. Tune in to watch Jamarl Thomas's show tomorrow. Big day tomorrow. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Let's go. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.